right, I think we're ready to go, ready to roll. All right, hi everybody. I'm Claire Regan, SPJ president, and welcome to the board meeting. We'll start with roll call from Israel Balderas.
All right, here we go. Claire Regan.
Here.
Here, Ashanti.
Here.
Emily Block. Not here. Daniela Ibarra, she's not going to be coming. Jody.
Here.
Adam.
Here.
Kevin.
Here.
And Peter.
Here.
We got 7 present, 2 absent, Claire, so we got enough for quorum.
Yeah, and I just want to
Emily just popped in, by the way. Emily just got here.
let you
sorry,
know that Daniela will be coming to the meeting, but late because she just started a new job. But she will be joining us when she can, as soon as she can. And Fred Brown is serving as our parliamentarian for the evening. Hi, Fred.
Hi,
Welcome and thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, so number 3, welcome. And let's go to the minutes of our last meeting.
Move to accept the minutes.
Second.
Is that Kevin? Okay, good.
Okay. Any discussion, any changes, corrections? None? Okay. So
Right,
you want to call the question, Claire?
Yep. Yeah, so all those in favor of approving the minutes?
Ayes, vote.
Aye.
Let's do aye.
Yep. Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the minutes are approved from May 25th. Thank you all. All right, so number 5 and 6, 2 brief reports, because we have quite a few items on the agenda. So I'm going to switch them and ask Jennifer Royer, our interim ED, to give her report first. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Claire. Thank you. I won't go into a lot of detail, especially on the first 2 items. And I just put my report into the board folder right before the meeting. So I'm sorry for the delay, but you can read everything later there if you want to. But we've had a whirlwind of a week. So a lot of leaders were in New York earlier in the week I guess this is Tuesday, so last week, to attend an event at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And it was a wonderful event. Claire did a ton of work to make it happen. She was in touch with the marketing person at the Met, and they planned it, pulled in Pointer to be with us, and they put together a fantastic panel, and it was just a really lovely event. So I will let Claire talk a little bit more about that. And then we just had Future Leaders Academy this weekend in Indianapolis, and it was a really great cohort of future leaders. Erwin, Claire, Hagit, we're all there. Rod Hicks on staff. Karen Sneath did the programming and facilitating, and she just does a wonderful job. And Kim Suyuki came into town to also help, and it was just great to get some staff together and some leaders together in person. And we have some promising leaders coming up the ladder in SPJ, and that was a really exciting thing to see. So other than that, and like I said, Claire was there, so she can speak more on that if she wants to. And then, so the end of June, we had a really good site visit at the JW Marriott and the Indianapolis Marriott downtown. As you saw on the agenda, we're considering both of those for the 2024 convention, and I'll go into more detail about that later. But it's exciting, and Indianapolis is ready to roll out the red carpet for us. So I hope you will approve one of those sites, and we can have a great convention in Indianapolis. I also wanted to let you know that I advertised for a fundraising director position several weeks ago. We only advertised it on LinkedIn, and we got 150 resumes and about 25 applicants. Look really promising. So I'm hoping to work the end of this week to schedule interviews over the coming weeks to hopefully have a fundraising director on board in time to meet you all at convention in Las Vegas. So working on that. And just speaking of convention really quick, as of yesterday, we have 90 people registered. This time last year, we had 57. So we're trending a little bit ahead. And the early bird deadline isn't until September 6th. So most of our attendees register at the last minute. We're journalists and we like deadlines and to be on deadline. So everybody's probably going to wait until right before the early bird to register. So, but the fact that we're trending ahead is a really good sign. And as of yesterday, we have 9 sponsors and exhibitors for the convention, but we are working on ways to reach out to exhibitors last year. We're sending emails, we're making phone calls, working to really boost those sponsorship and exhibitor numbers. And let's see, I get that pretty much sums it up. I'll let you read all the details if you want. And just once August hits, staff's going to be zeroed in on convention, and we're just looking forward to seeing you all in person in Las Vegas. That is my report.
Great, lots of good details. Thank you, Jennifer. Just adding a few things to that. Future Leaders Academy was wonderful. It was just a wonderful experience, invigorating, inspiring. And if there's any doubt about our future as an organization, as a society of professional journalists, it was dissolved when I was in the room with 21 wonderful leaders who are passionate and professional and ready to contribute to our organization. Very refreshing and like I said, very inspirational. And I'm grateful for the staff for putting it together. It was a wonderful program. Karen Sneath, like Jennifer said, she's a really great facilitator and got us all talking to each other. And everybody came out of their shell if they were in one. And there were leaders at every table taking turns. It was just a wonderful thing to watch. So enjoyed it very much. And you'll be meeting all these leaders. You know some of them already, but you'll be meeting them, I hope. You'll be getting to know them even more soon. So that's a good thing. Just going back to the Metropolitan Museum of Art event, you know, we call it the Met for short, but it's the Metropolitan Museum of Art, not to be confused with the Metropolitan Opera here in New York. So yeah, wonderful event. And just to clarify, I mean, I think people are just wondering, you know, how did it come about? And it's good for you to hear the story because it's all about connections, which are important for us as journalists, of course. And so, yeah, I'm a lifelong New Yorker, so I do have 25 years in the Deadline Club, so I do have a lot of connections in the New York area. And the Metropolitan Museum of Art Communications Director reached out to me about a year ago as former Deadline Club president, really looking to host a reception for journalists in the museum. And it had been done a few times with other affinity groups, NEBJ, I believe, and NAJA had their own receptions there before. So looking to do it with Deadline Club. So as I was stepping into this new position as national president, I thought, hey, let's expand it. And so I'm a big Poynter alum. I've gone to many programs at the Poynter Institute. And, you know, I'm grateful because the Poynter Institute has strengthened me as a journalist. And I've maintained connections. It's all about the connections. So I have connections at the Poynter Institute. So I thought maybe we could use a partner in this event, broaden it even more, and SPJ could share some of the wonderful connections that the Poynter Institute enjoys. So I sold it to Poynter. They joined into the party. So we planned it, SPJ and Poynter and the Met. So it was 3 big organizations planning it together. It was really for metro area journalists and journalism supporters and journalism leaders. We had a combined guest list of about 600, and we got about 200 RSVPs and came close to that in attendance. It was completely free, and it was the Metropolitan Museum of Art donated an open bar, hors d'oeuvres, the sound system. We put together a panel discussion. That was the museum's idea, and that's fine. They were our host in their location, so they're they were our generous host in that location. So we put together a panel discussion about storytelling and, sort of to combine the arts with journalism. It turned out to be a really good experience. And we brought in Sarah Seidner from CNN. That was through a Pointer connection through Al Tompkins. And I brought in Amy Padani from the New York Times, a former colleague. She is a creator of the Overlooked series. You can Google it. So connections, it's all about connections. So we had a great panel discussion. Guests got to tour a new exhibit and other places in the American Wing. And just a celebration, just a happy 2 hours of celebrating journalism, what we do, what we're devoted to, and the solidarity of a group. What did we get out of it as SPJ? New connections, where I wanted us to widen our circle of connections and friends and supporters and possible members, and we did it. The event did that. It left everybody with a good feeling, and we're going to follow up. And so just, it's a good optics event for us, especially to sponsor something with Pointer and the Met. So all good for win-win-win for SPJ. So what I'm thinking is, yes, I know all of our members cannot come to New York or be in New York. I get that. So I want you to know that it's an event that could be replicated in another city. If you have an idea or a suggestion in your city and you think we could do something like this, let me know and we'll look into it and try to make it happen. If you have any kind of connections or you want to start a connection, just let me know. I think it can be replicated, like I said. And the good news is that the Metropolitan Museum of Art has already offered the SPJ and Pointer as a team to us for us to come back and host the event again next year. So it'd be nice if it became an annual event. We could add it to our events and programming as a society. And last point about it is my other goal with the event was to tap some potential donors and supporters. We all know that we've had budget problems in the last year, budget challenges. So we're in between development officer. Jennifer mentioned she has advertised for one and is soliciting applications. And so we're in between. So this event sort of filled in the gap temporarily while we're looking for development. When this person comes in, there's a list already that this person can work with. It's great. And the list has new people on it, new people from Pointer and the Met and other sources. So we need to widen our circle in that area. I hope that works and raise our optics. So yeah, I'm very happy that it happened. I'm happy to those who came. We had some board members from SPJ and also from the foundation side, and it's great. So that also brought us together. We need to do more of that where the two boards come together, collaborate, celebrate. That was a good moment. We had 2 meals together and all good. So you can read more about it and see some photos tomorrow in Leeds, tomorrow's edition of Leeds, right, Jennifer? And also the staff has done a good job of, spreading it on social media with some photos, but reach out anytime if you want any more details about it. But I'm really glad that it happened. And last but not least, I'm just going to give a plug for another event coming up. And that is a webinar this Saturday, the 29th at noon. Again, a Pointer connection. A great leadership coach, Jill Geisler, is going to give a free, emphasis is always on free, she's doing it just for us for free, workshop on leadership. She's calling it Leading with Emotional Intelligence. And, those of you who know her name, Jill Geisler, she's just renowned as a leadership coach, and she's going to talk about how to develop your skills as a leader and a deeper understanding of people and situations and managing yourself so you can lead others. I think it'll be relevant for us as an organization. So it's Saturday from noon to 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. And I hope you can join in. We're inviting obviously the 2 boards, our regional coordinators, our chapter leaders, and though it's not officially open to all our members, our thousands of members, but they're welcome to join if they want to, and they can just reach out to headquarters. Jennifer, is there anything else you want to add about that? The technology part of it?
No, I don't think so. We've got it set up. I think, we've promoted it a few times. People can register and then you'll get more information on how to join it on Saturday. Did you mention there's a worksheet that we're going to send out that people can do before Saturday? So you'll be getting those soon if you've already registered. And yeah, I think that about covers it.
Good. All right. So I hope to see some of you, all of you, most of you there on Saturday. Okay, so that concludes my part of the report. So we're going to move on to number 7, the bylaws amendments. So I'm going to ask our bylaws committee chair, Adam, to explain each bylaw proposal, amendment proposal, and we will allow for public comment after each one is explained and the board discusses each one. So those of you here tonight as guests, please, take some notes, write down your questions as you hear each of the 3 proposals, and then we will take your questions and comments after we complete the 3 and then take a board vote. Okay, and
A
yes.
point of information, just a question. Are we going to be voting on all 3 as a set or each one individually?
As a set, after the discussions are finished. Do you have another suggestion?
I actually think it would make more sense if we voted on them individually, because each one stands on its own, unless they're somehow related in a way that I'm missing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to entertain that. I think it was in the name of efficiency, just to keep the conversation sort of efficient. Fred, our parliamentarian.
I was going to say, Peter, if you want to make that motion in the form of separating the 3 amendments instead of voting on it as a package, you could do that at the time that the conversation is finished.
Yeah, I was afraid you'd say that, Fred. Here we are on a summer eve. I'm at the beach, and I'm going to make a proposal to lengthen this whole process. So, yeah, I move that we consider each of the 3 bylaws amendments individually.
I second.
Okay, discussion? All right, we need to take a, Yeah.
On the issue of separate, I think I support Peter in that I also don't see a connection between all the different proposals. Obviously, the office terms, the 1 member, 1 vote, and the code of conduct all each stand on their own. And certainly members may want to, support one, but not support the other. As a package, I think, especially, and I can only speak for me, because the office terms raises a conflict of interest. I certainly would feel more comfortable voting for each individual proposal.
What Israel said.
okay, yeah, that's fine with me. That was the original plan, but in the interest of time, we were trying to consolidate, but I'm fine with that plan. That's good. All right, so we don't need to take notes altogether. They can be separate discussions. That's good. All right.
Do you want to call the question since there's a motion on the table?
I guess I should call the question. Okay, I call the question.
Okay.
Is that even necessary? Nobody's asking to speak, so I don't think we have to have. Is that right,
If you
Fred?
call the question, you have to vote on that too.
I know.
So
Let's not call the
just
question.
go ahead and vote.
Yeah.
Okay, we're ready to vote? All right, you want to do it by roll call or all at once? I think we'll do all at once. I think that's fine.
By
So
voice vote, that's fine.
all those in favor? Say
Aye.
I
Anybody opposed? Abstentions? All right, we've got a plan. All right, Adam, I'm ready to hand it over to you then. I do want to make sure that you remember that we have Danielle McLean here who will discuss and describe the C Code of Conduct. She's the chair of that task force. All right, you can
Sounds
go
good.
ahead
Thank you.
with the others. Thank you.
So the first proposal we're considering, we call it the terms change. It would change the terms in office for the board, the national board. Currently, the terms go from convention to convention, and that creates, a little bit of instability because some board members wind up getting more than a year, some less than a year. This would even it out at every board member would, their term would start on January 1st and it would end on December 31st every year going forward.
All right, so you're done, right? So anybody, discussion among the board members? Peter? You're on mute.
Peter, you're muted.
There we go. Okay, sorry about that. I have an amendment, and if the maker, well, we haven't had a motion on the floor yet.
No,
have
you
we,
have,
Fred?
you should actually have a motion before you start.
Oh, sorry,
discussing.
okay. Adam, could you take care of?
I'd make a motion to move this, for the board to move this proposal forward to the delegates, to the
Okay.
convention.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and
Okay, now we're ready
Okay.
for discussion. Go ahead, Peter.
I would make an amendment, and if the maker and the seconder of the original amendment will accept as a friendly amendment, that would save some time, but my amendment would be in, on Article 7, Section 4A, to change the date of December 31st to November 30th. The effect of that would be to end the current term on November 30th and start the new term of the new officers on December 1. And the effect of that would be that the current officers would have 13 months in office. The new set of officers would have 13 months in office. Those who are in the middle of a 2-year term would have exactly the same amount of 2 years that they would have in either event. So that's the purpose of the amendment, to
Just to-
make it even. And if you'll accept as a friendly amendment, then it'll just get incorporated. Otherwise, I'll make a separate amendment.
No, absolutely, that's fine by me. Just to clarify though, that would just change the date from December 31st to November 30th for just this year, right? Just for the transition.
Right,
And
this is a
then-
one-time issue. It's for the transition only, correct?
I just want to make sure we all understand that.
Mhm. All right,
Yes, and I would accept that amendment.
I think we have to have Emily's acceptance as well, because she seconded.
I'm fine with that.
Thanks. Okay.
all right. I see Israel hand up.
So I'm very concerned about Section 4 and the issue of extending the term of the current members. And the reason that I'm very concerned is because of our board policy regarding conflicts of interest. And I'm reading from page 15 of the board policy manual. Under the conflict of interest policy, SPJ staff, volunteers, national board members must disclose when they have an actual or potential conflicts of interests. They could either be personal or professional. And the examples of actual potential conflicts of interest include voting on any proposal that could financially benefit or otherwise reward the person who votes. And the policy manual says if there's even the slightest doubt, a person should disclose. And there's a process of discussing, number one, the conflict, and number two, voting on that topic. For me, I think the members who would have their terms extended beyond what the society voted on would have a benefit or an otherwise reward, right? Because when the society voted for us, and I can only speak for myself, they were saying, you, Mr. Balderas, will have your term finished at the next conference. But because we would be voting on Section 4A, that raises a conflict that I'm benefiting from this potential change in the amendment. So in my opinion, I am conflicted out of voting for this. Furthermore, I leave it to the board. I think anyone who benefits from this is conflicted out of voting for this proposal. Because if you benefit, right, if your time is extended beyond what we originally told the society we were going to run for, then certainly one could argue there's a conflict of interest. In my opinion, that would mean that 5 people on the board would be conflicted out if we followed the board policy that even if there's the slightest doubt, a person should disclose and should acknowledge that conflict. So I personally will not be voting on this, and I urge my fellow board members to be very careful in following the conflict of interest policy that's outlined in the board manual.
So I just, if through you, Claire, so if the question is disclosure, I mean, we could ask our parliamentarian to rule on this if we want to, but if the problem is disclosure, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that we're all disclosing that this would impact some of us. You know, I don't think that's a secret, and so if that's the issue, I think, correct? I mean, that's.
Well, the board policy says you need to determine if disclosure is enough or if the board members must be recused. So that's.
I think Erwin makes a really good point in the chat that we are not actually deciding on whether or not to implement this. We are deciding on whether or not to send this so that the delegates may decide for themselves. We're not making a vote as to whether or not we should accept this, which would then benefit us. We are only making a vote to send it to the body that has the ability to vote for a bylaws change. We don't do that. We can't do that. The delegates can. So it's actually not a conflict of interest because we're not making the decision.
That's correct.
Makes a shot.
As I would.
Okay, I see 3 hands up, but I'm not so sure who was first. Peter, you've already spoken, so I think we'll go back to you. I think we'll go for Kevin first. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, first of all, Israel, you say it's a benefit. Some of us would suggest it's a punishment to continue our term on. So, but I do understand, and my comment was going to be, I guess as a question, are you going to vote no for this, or you're going to abstain from voting?
For me personally, I'm going to recuse myself because I think this is a conflict of interest. I mean, I heard what Ashanti had to say, and certainly, you know, Erwin can make his comments. I think the essence of voting this to go to the floor, you know, if you look at the bylaws, when we vote, what we're sending the message to the society is that this has the support of the board. That's how I would read it. And so therefore, I would be very careful to say, by the way, I support this because at some point, if you do vote on this, I benefit, right? My time would be extended beyond what I promised the society when I ran, that, you know, my time would be up at the next convention. Certainly, I think to Peter's amendment that you would change, you know, from December 31st to, you know, December 1st. I think even if you extend that time, for me personally, that's how I would read this. So, you know, I hear Ashanti, and I certainly am reading the notes, but I personally will be recusing myself. And certainly as I'm doing that, I'm suggesting to my fellow board members that they take, at least consider what is written here, and you know, at least weigh the potential conflict of interest.
I guess I have a little different approach to that. I'm not in support of this, but I very well may vote for it to send it to the delegates and let them make the decision for the society. But I hear you. Thanks for clarifying your position. I appreciate it.
Peter.
Yeah, I kind of, well, first of all, I agree with Kevin, but it's really, and my tongue is only half of my cheek when I say this is not a benefit. I mean, this is, when we think of a benefit, we think of something that rewards us, that gives us a benefit. This is service to the society. it's unpaid, it's volunteer. I know that supposedly that gives us a certain amount of power. But you know, I have foregone the Lear jets and the limos, and I'm just here to serve, and I don't really see that as a benefit. I just, so in my conscience, I'm pretty comfortable sending this along, and the fact that we're just sending it along, we're not giving it the final vote. So I would just go. I'm not going to recuse myself. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's all.
Okay,
Oh, and I would point out one other thing, that if it is a benefit, my friendly amendment makes it less of a benefit. It's 1 month less of a benefit than it used to be.
all right, any other board members? All right, so I'll offer a little bit of my context on it, and that is that our conference dates have just varied wildly from, you know, with 2 months of difference between years, and and since our election cycle is based on the conference, it just makes things a little unsteady, unstable. So, you know, I'm in favor of giving each board term the year to serve. And that can't happen if it's based on conference dates. The best example is most recently we had 2022 was September 1, 2, and 3. And then our most recent conference was October 28, 29, 30, which is a difference of 2 months. So unless we disconnect the term of service from the convention, it's just going to vary widely. We already have so much turnover and instability in the organization. Hey, I felt it a lot during this term, and you all saw it and felt it as well. That's part of why we're unstable, because there's a lot of turnover. So I think I'm in favor of it, because I think everybody should get, each term should get 12 months, and it should be stable that way. And they can get their work done. The committees can get their work done. It affects a lot of different work. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times when we choose conferences, we're choosing the location and not even considering the dates. I've seen that happen a few times. So, I mean, dates are important if we base our election cycle on it. So that's my thoughts, and let's go to Jody.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. And I just wanted to echo the sentiments expressed by a few of the board members that, yeah, there's really a lot of debate on whether this is a punishment or a benefit. I would say if there was a benefit, it would be really upon the service that we could continue providing as board members. And for one, I'm just looking at it from a committee perspective, that if we could, you know, extend this to now November 31st, by September, we will know who the new board members are and who the new committee appointments are. And that would give us an opportunity to transition from one committee to the next, because, you know, we all know when we came onto the board, we came into this entering it from a platform of chaos. There was the financial situation that we had to deal with, and I would say that really took away from the transition straight into committee work, because all of our time was consumed about talking about the financial disaster. And just kudos to Israel, because he really held everybody's feet to the fire and making us come out of that really tough situation. So that all said, I think it would really be beneficial to keep the committee members in place, you know, for another month or two, to welcome and meet with the new committee members. That's the only benefit I see in this, is really aiding in that transition from the current leadership to the next leadership. So thank you.
Thanks, Jody. Kevin, is your hand up again? You're on mute.
Yes, so my thought was, and this would be an amendment to address Israel's concern. If we really believe that this has the benefits that we're purporting, it would seem to me that maybe this board could get behind this if it didn't apply to us. In other words, start this. I feel really odd, as Israel has suggested, of voting something that's going to benefit the current board members. If this were to start the following year, well, I guess then we still have Ashanti. It would be voting on that in the previous year. But I'm just trying to think of a way that we could start this later than coming into convention this year and extending things at the end of this convention. But again, the delegates have the last say in this, so they'll make the decision on the floor about how they feel about this.
Okay, thank you. I just want to add a point about the budget. Our budget is calendar year, based on the calendar year, not on convention to convention. So I think the new arrangement would add stability to the budget planning process. We all encountered, the confusion and chaos about the budget most recently. So I think this would bring some more stability to the budget to match the budget plan, match the budget calendar. And Kevin, I understand your points. I understand them, but I'm thinking, I don't see it as a benefit. I see it just as maybe a benefit to the society for stability, but not to us individually. And so therefore, I don't see it as a conflict to us. And, I guess I understand it maybe feel a little uncomfortable when you were first thinking about it, but there's no better time to start than right away. It's just going to continue year after year. And I think it might be based on from long ago when we were a fraternity. It might be left over from that. It's just an old practice. I don't know of any other group that does it. And actually, most groups have 2-year terms for officers. A lot of them do. And we don't have that. So it's just a lot of turnover. So to me, that's the best point about it, is it reduces the turnover and the instability, and also the budget. And yes, I'm eager to pass it along to the members and hear them out and let them decide. Emily.
Hi, I apologize for thinking about this so late in the game, but I wonder how this applies to our regional coordinators, and if there's been discussion about if those terms should change to match up, and maybe Adam can help answer some of that. Thanks.
That's a great question. The bylaws committee decided not to include regional coordinators, but my personal opinion is that it should. It doesn't really make much sense to have the board and the regional coordinators be on 2 different starting election cycles. So I would very much accept a friendly amendment if somebody wants to make it to include regional coordinators.
I would love to make that friendly amendment.
Please do. I accept it.
So what do I do? Do I motion to amend, or?
Yeah, I think so, right? Or do we, if it's a friendly amendment, do we need to vote on it, or?
Well, you could adopt it by, as long as, I would say go ahead.
So we're
If you
not-
really want to be
point out
safe,
that-
vote on this separately and then vote on it as an addition, as after it's been added to the proposal. But it does, I think it does fit the description of a friendly amendment, since it simply extends the structure you are adopting throughout the organization.
I would point out that
point of
Emily
clarification.
Emily's a seconder of the original motion, so she obviously accepts her own friendly amendment.
Point of clarification for the parliamentarian.
Go ahead.
As I understand it, so what Emily is proposing is that there would be a change to Article 7, Section 4 that would now include the regional directors, right? So first sentence is about the board, then the second sentence is about the elected officers and at-large directors. And so therefore, there would have to be in that sentence, and Adam, you could also help me on this, that we would have to add the regional coordinators as a separate entity, right? Because they wouldn't be at-large directors. And they're not appointed. I guess the president does appoint. So would this not have to go back to the bylaws committee to pencil in those changes?
No, because the board is able to make amendments to the proposals as it sees fit. So we could do that.
So then, would you then have to write that in so that when we're voting, we know what we're voting on and how it's going to be in the actual bylaw proposal? Would you,
I'm
would you
happy.
have to go in there and write it in?
I mean, I don't think so, because we're adding we're saying what we want it to be. So and you literally just said where we would add language. So I don't think we would need to do that right now, as long as we're voting on the principle of it. Like, we know what we wanted, what we wanted to do.
From a parliamentary standpoint, I am not familiar enough with the bylaws to know where the regional, the new coordinators, etc., are mentioned. It may be in operating procedures. And if that's
Yeah,
the
it would be
case,
in the.
if that's the case, it doesn't
Sorry.
need to be part of this amendment.
Okay. Because I don't see that we have regional coordinators at all in the Article 7, because Article 7 is all about board of directors.
Right, and so
Regional
the friendly
coordinator-
amendment.
So we would be adding, right? So Article 7 is about board of directors, but we would be adding regional coordinators now to Article 7.
Bob Becker mentions that they're in Article 8, so it would be changing those terms or fixing that language.
So the changes would be to Article 8, a new change to Article 8 and not Article 7. Is that right?
Yes, but Article 8's in the language that I sent over. So, we could, but what I'm saying is that we've added a friendly amendment to change that. So we know what we want that language to do. So we could vote on it, is my point.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I understand correctly what you're saying, because I will defer to the parliamentarian on this one. But Article 7 is about the board of directors. Article 8 is about the regional coordinators. So if we're going to say that the regional coordinators will also have their time extended, right, from right now, what it is November 1st through the end of 2024, that change would come in Article 8, not Article 7.
I believe so. I'd have to go back.
I think Bob Becker is right about that. You would probably need a separate motion unless you want to somehow make this a Claire's original idea of combining everything. You could combine Article 8 with Article 7.
No, so again, we can amend the language. That's what the board can do. So what we are amending the proposal to include RCs. That's what we're doing. The board has the authority to do that. So I'm a little confused on why we don't just, there's a friendly amendment, it gets added into the proposal, and we vote on it.
Yeah, I think you could call it article, the next section, and just make that the amendment that it.
Okay. So the friendly
That
amendment,
language, the same language, section 8.
yes, the friendly amendment, Emily, as I'm understanding it, is to amend Article 8 to extend the RCs, as well as the same way we're extending all the other board.
Correct. I just suggested making it equal. I don't know how that relates to articles, but whatever way makes it streamlined for both parties.
Sounds legit.
Fantastic.
Can I call the question?
Yes,
Thank
please.
you.
Point of clarification to that call. I thought we were going to have public comment before the board votes.
It was my understanding that we were going to go through all of these and then have a public comment once we were done explaining each of the bylaws proposals, and then a public comment before we vote in its entirety. But there's a motion currently on the floor.
Okay.
I say we vote.
Okay, so we're voting. I'm sorry, I'm confused about the two different.
So the problem is somebody put a motion on the floor, right, that we're having discussion right now. So me calling the question means we have to vote on it,
Mhm.
even though the plan was initially to explain all of the bylaws, have the public comment at the very end, and then vote. But because there was a motion on the floor, we have to vote on it. Or
have to vote on
the
the
motion
motion
has to be
to call.
withdrawn.
You also
Yeah,
have to vote.
or the motion
vote
has to be
call the
withdrawn.
question.
Yeah, I think the concern is to allow for public comment on each one. I don't know, how would we work that out then? They would just, the comments would be after the votes?
The motion could be withdrawn, and then we could wait until the end and then call each, put a motion for each separate one after public comment.
I think that's
do
gonna get really confusing. I think we have a motion on the floor and I think we should just vote on it now. I think it's gonna be super confusing if we have a whole bunch of motions and then we have public comment, then we have to come back and vote on them.
Well,
I think,
if I could,
Claire, did you not say that people, instead of taking notes so that they save their comments until the end, they could now comment? And I think that also is a legitimate way to have this after each section.
After each vote? Or
No,
after,
before each vote.
okay, so that would be now for this one.
right, after the board discussion, open to public comment. I think that's what
Okay.
you're saying, Fred, right?
Yes, and that's, I think, the way that Claire laid it out.
So, okay, does that follow proper parliamentarian procedure? Is that okay? Okay,
It's,
with a motion on the floor?
it's fair. So, yes, I think it does, if you're going to vote separately on each amendment, then there should be a comment period
Okay,
before.
So-
And
That
if you want to extend it beyond the board to others who are in this call, I think that's your prerogative.
okay. All right, let's do that, but let's put a time limit on comments. Ashanti, could you help with that?
Yes,
And what are we doing? We're doing 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Yeah, just to keep, because we have 2 other proposals that we have to get to. So yeah, let's watch the clock for that. That'd be great. Okay, so I'm just looking around. I see a few people. I'm just taking a survey. All right, let's go. Bob Becker first.
Yeah, I'm going to be very brief. I'm agnostic on this amendment to address Israel's concern. I think you could simply say that this amendment will take effect if it's passed with the next board. Ashanti is already elected for next year, and then members will be voting for candidates knowing that those candidates will be serving a longer term.
Okay, thank you. Erwin Gratz.
There we go. Just 2 points about the overall proposal to make the switch. In my mind, there are 2 things that recommend it. Number 1, when we originally reduced the size of the board to 9 members, 2 of which are appointed, we never did settle on any language in the bylaws that tells the 7 elected board members and the president when they should fill out the board seats with the appointed members. This proposal, as it is written, would place a deadline on that process. And the other thing that I think this proposal has to recommend it goes back to something Claire began to mention about the budget. We currently adopt a budget now, usually in late November. The way we currently conduct business, that means newly elected board members will be asked to vote on a budget proposal sometimes just a couple of weeks after their election. if you make this change, you will in essence have a veteran board voting on a budget, which I think makes more sense. That's it.
Thanks, Erwin.
Yep.
Okay, let me just look around. Shanti, if you see anybody else, let me know.
No, I don't. Bob Becker has his hand up, but I think we are,
Left over.
okay, it's left over. All right,
Yeah.
go ahead and put your hand down.
All right. There doesn't seem to be any other public comment. So it looks like we're ready to make the motion to vote. Is that correct?
Just a question for a point of, just a point of clarification. The motion now includes the regional coordinators as well to align their terms with the board. Is that correct? Okay, that's all.
Okay. So Fred, do we go back to the motion that was on the floor or new motion?
You're voting on the amended motion.
Okay, do we need to restate it?
Anyone need it restated?
No, I think it's clear. I think we're ready. Okay, let's do roll call vote. Israel, could you take the roll call vote, please?
Yep.
So we're voting A or nay, right? Yes or no?
Yes or no? That's correct. Claire.
A. Aye.
Hi. Okay. Ashanti. Israel recuses himself. Ashanti.
Yeah.
Emily.
Yes.
Daniela Ibarra. Is she here yet?
No.
Okay. Absent. Jody.
Yes.
Adam.
Yes.
Kevin.
No.
Peter.
Aye.
So the motion passes 6 yes, 1 no, 1 recusal. And 1 absent.
Okay, thank you. So it goes on to.
Wait, hold on. I thought both Kevin and I voted no. Isn't that 2 no's?
Oh,
One
did you say no?
recusal?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I
I
said
got
no.
you down. Oh, sorry. I apologize. I
Yeah,
got you down as yes.
Okay.
My correction. So then that is.
3 no's. Oh,
it's-
sorry, 1 abstention,
it's-
1 abstention, yes, 1
So
recusal.
it's, so it's 1, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 yes, 2 no's, 1 recusal.
Okay,
No,
All
wait,
right.
I'm sorry. Hold on. I apologize. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. Thank you.
all right, thank you for the robust discussion and it's difficult to break tradition that we've had for so long. So I appreciate the open-mindedness in the discussion. Thank you all. All right, let's go on to bylaw amendment number 2, 1 member, 1 vote. Adam, could you give us some context, please?
Yep, so currently SPJ governs itself through a delegate system. The delegates meet once a year at the convention and they discuss bylaws changes, resolutions, and other business. This proposal would move us away from a delegate system and would open up votes on bylaws changes and resolutions, or really bylaws changes, to the full membership. Every member would get an email with the proposals and they would vote. They would vote for them that way. This is very similar to how our 1 person, 1 vote works for our elections as well. The process for proposed bylaws changes to move forward would stay the same. They would still go through the bylaws committee. They would go then have to get approved by the board. And there would also be a method for members to petition to bypass the bylaws committee.
Okay. Fred, is there a motion needed for the discussion or yes? right?
Yes, and Adam can make that.
Okay, Adam,
I motion that we move this proposal forward to the delegates at the convention.
second.
okay, discussion, board members.
I actually, very quickly, I would like to add one friendly amendment, or somebody else can do it. But currently, all proposals, if the delegates approve and take effect immediately, we should probably add language to this saying that it won't take effect. If it's approved, it won't take effect until after the convention, because if the delegates vote themselves out and there's still resolutions or other things for them to discuss, they won't be able to to move forward. So I would very much accept a friendly amendment saying this doesn't go into effect until the end of the convention.
Okay,
I'll make that friendly amendment.
Thank you.
thank you for clarifying. Okay. Peter, is your hand up for a comment?
It is, but I think Israel was first.
Go ahead, Israel.
Adam, so this is the same bylaw proposal that came before the convention last year, if I understand that correctly.
It's not, Sorry.
It's the, I guess the idea behind it, right? Getting rid of what it is that we currently have and then trying to make changes. There, the vote last year came split, right? 50-50, literally down the middle. Were there people in your committee that voted against it last year that are now supporting it?
I don't know if there was anybody who was specifically a delegate, but there were people that voted that voiced opposition to it. Sonny Alvarado was one of them. Trying to think if he was the only one, because some of the people weren't around for that discussion last year. But Sonny Alvarado was somebody who voiced a lot of concerns about it last year, and he's now on board for it this year.
What is it that he did or that he added that he was concerned about last year that now is different? That
I don't,
is his mind.
right. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but my belief is that he just understood the proposal better. And after he saw the reaction to it, the vote to it last year, and he saw that it did have a lot of support, I think that's sort of what turned his changed his mind to it. Also, what some of the changes that we did make, some of the stuff last year, like the deadlines for bylaws proposals, to come before the board and the membership, they were 200 days, some of them. I think he and some other people rightly felt that was too long, that was too, unrealistic. So we shortened those down to 60 days, and we made it easier for proposals to move forward, because the goal is not to make it impossible.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for that insight.
Okay, on to you, Peter.
Okay. A couple of questions, and I think this may be easily resolved, but I'm not sure whether this is part of the new language or the old language, but the term leaders that's used in Article 14, Section 4A, my question is there any top officer of any chapter or community that is anything other than a president? And maybe Jennifer knows the answer to that, or if anybody knows the answer to that, I'd be interested in knowing whether any other titles are used for top officers.
I don't think
okay,
so. I think that's painting with a pretty broad brush. I mean, I think you could say the vice president, the president, secretary, treasurer of the chapters. But if you have a better term for it or something that you think fits, I would definitely accept the friendly amendment for that.
Yeah, I mean, if the intent, and it wasn't clear to me from reading this if this was new language, but if it is new language, or even if it's not, if the intent is, when we talk about leaders, we're talking about the top officers of the chapters and the communities. Why don't we call them principal officers? Otherwise, an argument could be made that anybody on a board would be a leader, and you could have a whole lot of leaders of one chapter. And I would say principal officer, if you'd accept that as a friendly amendment, that would I think would clarify and make the proposal more understandable. Less arguments.
That's fair enough.
The other, and Adam is accepting that, right? Adam?
Yes.
All right. Okay, cool. The other point I just want to raise, and I'm not sure I have a solution, but I would point out that under the way that the method of amending the bylaws, if the board doesn't originate it, and if it originates with a chapter or a community or any member, you're going to need 5% of the members who sign on. That I'm not sure what membership is, but
Right.
if it's between 4,000 and 5,000, that's like between 200 and 250.
Yes.
Then on the vote, on the final vote of approving the bylaws amendment, you would need 10%, at least 10% of those voting for president. So if there are maybe 300, and that's kind of a pretty good turnout, who vote for president, and you get 10% as your floor, that'd be 30. So you need 200 to 250 people to get this thing going, and only 30 people maybe to actually ratify it. And
Sure.
it just seems that the numbers are kind of backwards here.
Right. So again, I'd be willing to amend that. The reasoning for that was the 5%. So the 5% bar of membership was actually set by last year. We worked off of last year's bylaws language, but initially when the delegate analysis task force moved this forward, or right afterwards, I think it was me and Bill Blyer had set the bar at 250. But the bylaws committee last year was concerned that, depending on what happens with SPJ's membership, 250 could be an obtainable goal if there's 5,000 members, but if the SPJ's membership ever unfortunately dropped, that might become harder. So they wanted to set it up at 5%. I'd be happy to put it at 250. I think 250 for a petition is a good number. If you can't get 250 people to sign on to a petition, and you can't get chapter leaders to get their members to buy into it, then it's probably not a change that's going to pass. When it comes to the 10%, again, I think the concern that the bylaws committee had last year. So the proposal the delegate analysis task force had was that you needed 2/3 majority. I think we talked about that. Maybe the board adopted that last year, but you needed a 2/3 majority of those who vote for a proposal to pass, right? And I think the bylaws committee last year was concerned that, that's great, a 2/3 majority, but what if you have a small number of people to vote? Now, I agree 30 people would be a really small number, but I think they were trying to set it up so that way, if in a nightmare scenario, you only have like 5 people vote or 10 people vote for something, which I don't think would happen, but I think they were just trying to be prepared for that. So
Yeah, okay. I mean, I get that, and I have less concern about the 5% threshold for getting it on there as it's now stated. I mean, I think that makes sense. Than I do with the 10%, which I think, I mean, it means that you would need, if you had a total turnout for president of 300, you'd need 2/3, as long as you had at least 30 people who voted on the thing, and 2/3 of those, that means 20 people would have to vote in favor of the amendment. It just seems like a pretty low bar, and
if you want to set it higher,
I don't know why we.
I'm happy to do so.
I'm not sure why we need any minimum that's less than a number of people voting for president. I don't have a good answer. There is no perfect answer. I think at the very least it should be higher, but I don't have a good number. But in the absence of anything else, I'd say 90%.
90% of the people who voted for
Now
president.
that's kind of high, because you may have people voting for president who at least.
I mean, we wanted to make it realistic, right?
I don't have a good number. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, Adam.
I said we wanted to make it. We wanted to make it realistic, right? The goal is to make it so that bylaws changes can come forward, that the members can consider them, but that you don't just have superfluous changes that get forward and get passed by a super small number. Now, I get 30 might seem shorter to you, small to you, and maybe it is, but I also think that they were just trying to set it at a bar that's realistic. I think that's what the bylaws committee was considering.
If you would accept let's say 70%, I'd be
Okay.
happy with that.
Fair enough. I'll accept that.
All right, can we move
Okay.
on? Kevin has his hand up. Are you done, Peter? Kevin?
I am done.
You know, I can't even begin to tell you how angry this makes me. This is the same exact, for all intents and purposes, the exact same amendments that came to this convention last year. And I happened to say the day after the convention, what should have been done is the people who opposed this should have been paired with the people who supported this. There should have been a mediation of differences that have taken place over the last year. Israel's comment about who was added to the board and what did they contribute hits to the heart of that. There should have been people on both sides of this brought in and had a discussion to hammer out the differences. That would have been the hard way to do it, but it would have been the right way. Instead, what we do is we're parading the same thing that came to the convention floor last year, and we're praying that you get one more vote than you got last year to pass this. You're sitting here editing this and making changes on the fly, 70%, 90%, what he goes, I mean, this is sad. And it is embarrassing that we are doing this and trying to change a significant portion of what this society has done for the last 117 years on the fly, doing the exact same thing that we did last year. I'm voting against this. I don't want this to go to the convention floor, and I hope the other board members take the same approach. This needs to be worked out. If it doesn't go to the convention this year, this needs to be worked out in a committee or a task force so that we're not doing this every year and coming up with the same results.
All right, I'm looking, I don't see any other board comment. All right, so we can move on to public comment, unless I'm skipping a step there for parliamentarian. I think you can just move on. All right, looking around for public comment. All right, we'll go with Bob Becker first and then Colin.
Okay.
I'm going to remind you that we're going to time 2 minutes and Ashanti's.
Okay. I am going to urge you very seriously to not send this to the floor. You are opening yourself up and the society up to yet another 2-hour plus debate over exactly the same thing with exactly the same problems. I don't want to get into the weeds about what these proposals say. I can tell you that there is at least one section I believe is illegal under Illinois law, and the timelines do not work. I don't believe that the committee actually walked through them to see that they do work. I will highlight which proposals pieces I think. If you look at Article 14, Section 3, it says that the board can amend the proposal, but only if the bylaws committee chair acquiesces in the amendment. I don't believe that you can legally delegate that to the bylaws committee chair to be the gatekeeper. As for the timeline, it says that the board has to vote to send, whether to send a proposal to the floor 60 days before the convention. And that if chapters want or communities want to override that denial, they have to get 20% of chapters, in other words, approximately 30 to 36 chapters, and then 250 members, but they only have 30 days to do that, because if you vote on the 60 days, it has to go to the floor at 30 days. So the possibility of anyone overriding a board decision, which has happened twice in the past 15 years, is impossible. The timelines just don't work. And this is going to be a disaster. And I hope you won't subject the society to it again.
Thank you, Bob. Colin?
Hey there, thanks. So yeah, I mean, so last year we voted and debated this for far too long. We spend a lot of our oxygen debating whether eliminating the delegate system was a good idea or not. A lot of the people who voted in favor of this proposal, I feel did not have accurate information about what was being proposed and were not fully informed. And I think that is what would happen en masse if this proposal were moved forward any further. This is a hastily presented, poorly drafted proposal that, look, you're making edits to it right now before you're about to vote on it. And how thoroughly have you thought through those edits? This is a substantive change to governance of the society that you all are caretakers of right now. Your legacy will be this vote, right? If you look back at the board makeup 10 years ago, there were 23 members and student representatives on the board. And there was actually a campus chapter leader as well. And we decided to shrink the board down to 9 and get rid of all of those voices. And I think a lot of us in hindsight regret that. And that is a legacy that we wish we could go back and change. And I feel like this is a flashpoint. This is a
30
moment
seconds.
where you need to really consider, is this thought through? Have we had a transparent process that involves members beyond the board? I didn't know about any meetings that took place that were public and open to any members. I wasn't notified. I was one of the opposition parties and I wasn't notified about anything. Someone had confronted me earlier in the year to join the bylaws committee, but the only way that I would join the bylaws committee is if it was a transparent process, and I never heard back. So I really hope that you will vote this down and not let us go through that again. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Colin. Hagit Lamore Foundation President.
I am actually speaking not as the foundation president. I'm speaking as an SPJ member who really loves this society. I want you to consider this hypothetical. A small group of 1, 2, maybe 3 people pool their money and buy memberships the month before a vote so that new members can vote on an issue and the month later drop off. It's a very inexpensive way to turn our democracy into something lesser. It's already possible right now in the board elections. And now it'll be possible for that board to manage the society in a way that sounds like it's more democratic, but is the opposite of democratic, because you are concentrating power to anyone willing to buy the votes. Delegates represent members. Delegates represent chapters. I want delegates to represent communities and our unaffiliated members. The delegate system has worked. It is for people who really know what the actual proposals are about, as opposed to potentially brand new members who don't really care about the society at all.
Looking around for more public comment. I don't see any. All right, I think we're ready to move forward. So,
yeah, so I just want to say that, like, you know, currently the bylaw system is absolutely broken. It incentivizes us to argue about bylaws debates endlessly. You know, it's not just the delegate meeting where we argue about these things. People go into email chains and we have endless arguments about just absolute minutia. Right now, SPJ is incentivized to be governed through its bylaws. In fact, last night, I mean, you want to talk about hastily written bylaws. Last night, the board got an email like from somebody begging for two bylaws changes off the cuff, because and it was a regional coordinator too, who I would argue probably spends more time focusing on national issues than they do their own region. But, you know, so that's why we have these big arguments every year, and we have to stop. The delegate system right now is not democratic. You know, the board years ago created an entire system for representing regional delegate, like unaffiliated members. And then the people that created that system took those votes for themselves. They weren't unaffiliated members. They were members of chapters, and they were casting, you know, 1 year, 4 of them cast almost 30 votes, right? You need, as we discovered last year, you need 49 votes for something to pass. That's insane. You know, there was a former chapter leader in Region 1 who a couple years ago cast 10 votes. My chapter this year is going to be lucky if we get 3, right? 3 votes. And we had to hold events. We had to file an annual report. The regional delegates don't have to do any of that. All they have to do is email headquarters and say, I'd like to be a regional delegate. You know, and on top of that, 7 regions went completely unrepresented for the first couple of years of it. The only reason we had more last year was because I was signing people up. Most years, the only people who serve as regional delegates are people who are former chapter leaders. On top of that, most chapter leaders show up at the delegate meeting having no idea what they're going to vote on. Maybe just learned what it was. But when somebody makes an amendment during the meeting, they're totally lost. I'm still hearing complaints. I still occasionally hear complaints about the amendment that was made for the communities vote a couple of years ago when we were debating whether to give communities delegate votes, which lasted months, by the way. You know, the chapter leaders don't care about this stuff. We're not debating the stuff that's really important to them. We should have known about the database issues years ago, but that never comes up during our delegate meetings. On top of that, if you have to read an entire book on Robert's rules to be able to effectively participate in this system, it's a mess. That's not engaging everybody and giving everybody a fair opportunity. So I would say we need to get rid of the delegate system. I think it's killing this organization. Thank you.
I'd like to call the question.
Thank you, Adam. Okay. So, okay, the question is called. So Fred, can you just help me through this? Where are you, Fred? Oh, there you
Yeah,
are.
you should vote on calling the question before you
Okay,
vote on the question.
all right. Roll
It
call,
takes a 2/3 majority.
roll call vote on calling the question then. Israel, can you roll call?
Yep, to call the question, here we go. Claire?
Yes,
A yes vote means you vote immediately.
That's right.
A point of
Israel.
question. I have a point of
The
question.
call, the question has been called and we're on the roll call,
All
Kevin.
right. Okay.
Israel, yes. Ashanti,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Daniela, I just saw her show up. But I don't know if she knows. Everything.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Jody? Jody? Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Adam,
Yes.
Kevin,
No.
and Peter.
Yes.
Okay, so to call the question, it passes 8 yes, 1 no.
So now you vote, no discussion.
okay, moving on.
I have a point of question. Pete, what about Peter's amendments? Were those folded in there? Are we accepting Peter's amendments? Because that whole exchange has me confused as to whether anything Peter said got amended.
They were friendly amendments, I believe.
Could we go over those? Could you read that in its entirety before we vote?
Yeah, so he, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, voted to change the term from leaders to officers for chapter leaders. And
Actually, it was principal officers.
principal officers, okay.
Yeah.
And he set the threshold for the votes, the 2/3 majority plus 70% of those who voted for president. Correct, Peter?
Yes.
All right, clarified, Kevin
Thank you.
and all. All right, moving ahead to the vote, correct? We're ready for that now?
Okay, so this is the vote on the bylaw amendment proposed by the bylaws committee to move to the floor. Roll call, here we go. Claire,
Yes.
Israel, yes. Ashanti,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Daniela,
Still not here.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, she's here, I
Daniela,
saw her.
welcome, Daniela.
Jody,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Kevin,
No,
Peter,
no,
yeah, Peter. Peter, are you voting yes?
He looks like
I think he
he's frozen.
I think he froze.
He froze.
Like me
So
Would you like me to text him? Or I can't do that. I don't know if that's parliamentarian procedure. He is
I mean,
I
frozen.
think
you can sort of say he's absent, but still Fred, correct me if I'm wrong. He's not present when the vote is happening. So I
no,
would,
none of you are actually technically present.
sorry. So then what would you then? Yeah, he's back.
He's here,
Peter,
he's here
are you
now.
voting yes?
He's back. Peter's back. Okay,
Yes. On the
you're muted. You're back but muted.
yes. Okay.
Okay, yes, and I'm sorry, this is like the Outer Banks internet connection system here. It's a little, yeah, but yes,
You're on the beach. I love it.
I'm on the beach.
We heard.
The proposed bylaw amendment, the vote is 8 yes, 1 no, so it will go to the floor, convention floor.
All right, good. Thank you, Israel. Thank you all. All right, we're moving on to the third bylaw amendment proposal, and that is code of conduct. Adam? And we have Danielle here, if you just want to mention that and move to her.
Yep. So as we know, SPJ is, there's a committee or task force, I forget the exact terminology.
Yeah, actually, do you mind if I interrupt you? And I think Danielle has that prepared. Can we just go right to her?
Right, I just wanted to just very quickly say
Go ahead.
what this proposal would do would just add language codifying the bylaws, the code of conduct. The bylaws committee did not actually draft the code of conduct. There's a separate committee, and we are not voting on the code of conduct itself, just the language to codify it. That's all.
Perfect. Good clarification. Okay, Danielle McLean is here, and she is the chair of the task force committee that is writing the code of conduct. So I asked Danielle to explain to all of us what the committee is working on and how it's doing.
Thank you, Claire. The task force was created following an incident at Media Fest 2022. The issue was resolved, but action was taken by the board of directors, and part of that was the creation of this task force. The goal of the task force is to create a code of conduct that helps make SPJ a welcoming, hospitable place for all journalists to advocate for their profession, network, and hone their craft. That includes fostering a respectful, courteous, and professional atmosphere for all journalists of all stripes and backgrounds, so everyone can feel comfortable taking their involvement with a society wherever they would like it to go. The task force that Claire and I formed is really a true all-star team. The members include myself. I'm a former ethics committee chair, FOI committee chair, and New England chapter president, and former at-large board member. It also includes Matt Hall, former president, board members Kevin Smith, Danielle Ibarra, and Jody Rave Spotted Bear. It also includes Professional Standards and Ethics Committee Vice Chair Chris Roberts and SPJ's Director of Ethics and Diversity Rod Hicks. We've been hard at work the last couple of months, working bi-weekly and now weekly. Nothing has yet been decided, and we are still working on crafting the language and the details of the code. I can say it will include a new conduct standards for participating at SPJ events, new enforcement procedures, an ad hoc enforcement body, and an appeals process. We are very excited to share what we come up with as soon as we're done, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Excellent. Thank you, Danielle. That's a great summary. And I just want to commend the task force. It's a lot of work. It's difficult discussions because a lot of it has nuance, words and terms, phrasing, nuances, and, you know, ethics are involved, different value systems. Everybody is pooling all of those in really robust discussions. And I really appreciate the weekly now. They're working on it weekly, the weekly work on this project. It's important for the society. And just to establish, as Danielle mentioned, a positive culture within our society. Not so much all about the penalties, but about just a good culture for all of us. All right, that said, we're going to move on to the proposal. And Adam, do you want to just clarify one more time that we're not approving language tonight because that's not completed?
Right, we're not including approving the code of conduct itself. We're just approving language into the bylaws that would codify it. So all members must adhere to the code of conduct passed by the SPJ Board of Directors.
That's the language. Okay. All right.
I have a question.
Well, there's the motion. We have a motion first, and then we have the second.
Well, Israel has his hand up.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Israel.
Before we had the motion, I wanted to ask questions of the presenter.
You can go ahead and make the motion now.
Okay. I make a motion to adopt, to codify the code of conduct in the bylaws.
Do we have a second? Okay, great. Now discussion among the board members. Go ahead, Israel.
So that's why I hope I did it right, Fred. So as I understand it, the code of conduct will not be in the bylaws per se, because obviously we need, sometimes we might need to change that code of conduct. But the code of conduct will be, because it's a policy, it's going to only be a board vote. Is that correct? No? I see Ashanti shaking her head, so that's why whoever wants to answer, I don't.
Is that a parliamentarian question?
No, it's the people. So it's so as I understand it, Adam is the bylaws. Go ahead.
It's a question for the drafters, I think.
Okay, thank you. So as I understand it, the bylaws committee is bringing a proposal to a bylaws amendment, right? And so all that we're changing to the bylaws, Adam, is that language. All members of the society must adhere to the code of conduct approved by the board of directors.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So, but that code of conduct hasn't been approved, right? So that language, we're still working on that. And at some point between now and whenever, I don't know if it's going to be this board or it's going to be the next board, will approve that code of conduct. But as I understand it, the original issue was what happens if members don't follow the code of conduct, either at chapters, at events, or conventions, right? That was the original sort of procedure that we had launched, because we didn't have both the code of conduct and the way to apply the code of conduct. Do I recall that correctly?
Can I ask Danielle, could you clarify, Danielle, and explain what your task force is recommending for the trickle down and to what levels the code would apply to?
I apologize. Yeah, no, we are looking, we're still kind of exploring some of the details, so we're not thinking it will be applying to chapters. So this would be for national events and national, board meetings and various procedures at the national level.
Regional conferences, I believe, right?
Regional conferences as well will be included, but it would not necessarily trickle down to the chapter level. Although, certainly chapters are free to take this code on for their own events.
Okay.
That the context that you needed, Israel?
Well, so if that's the case, then all members of the society must adhere to the code of conduct. Then that wouldn't, what Danielle just said, that wouldn't be accurate, right? All members of the society must adhere to the code of conduct at certain functions. It wouldn't apply to the chapters. So the language of that thing that we're voting on is actually not applicable, because that's a very broad term. All members of the society must adhere to the code of conduct. If not, you may get kicked out, right? That's sort of the end result of this. So I'm trying, that's a pretty broad language that doesn't give me at least a, it's quite arbitrary from a legal perspective, that we're adopting broad language that to me, it's vague and overbroad.
Yeah. Good point. I understand it. And some people are going to comment. I just want to clarify. That's just one of the options, is expelling a member. There are going to be other gradations of options along the way that the committee is working on.
Sure, but nonetheless, there
Agreed.
will be levels of, this might happen, this might happen, this might happen, but because the code of conduct will include quite a punitive outcome, depending on the seriousness of the action, no doubt about it. But all members of the society, pretty broad, must adhere to the code of conduct, right? That's pretty definitive, but that would encompass chapters, that would encompass regions, that would encompass even student chapters, right? Because, and the reason I'm saying that is because this is followed by several sections where we are saying these are the types of membership: professional, institutional, student, postgraduate, fellow, associates. All those people must adhere to the code of conduct. So do I have that correct to the drafters?
I can't speak about how it's written for you guys for the bylaws, but like, our working draft that we are trying to create, we are specific about like this being 4 events. And yeah, I mean, it would apply for, any SPJ member or anybody that attends an SPJ event, essentially. So, I mean, if you do this kind of conduct at a SPJ event and someone files a complaint, essentially it would trigger it. But I mean, it's a working draft, so I mean, I can't get too much into specifics here, but like, yeah, that's, it's more specific in like what we're creating.
I appreciate the work that you're doing, but this is putting the cart before the horse then, in my opinion, because we're adopting language that is quite broad. And I'm wondering why, Adam, we just didn't wait for the code of conduct to come first.
Adam, and then Kevin, and then Peter.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why we're somewhat at a disadvantage is because our deadline is earlier than the task force's deadline. They can keep working until they're done. If we wanted to get something through the bylaws this year, we had to, I believe we have to have it posted online by the 27th or the 28th. So we had a deadline we had to beat. Mark Balin was also the one who insisted on having this language be added to the bylaws, and he wrote it. So I figured I'd bring it. The bylaws committee would bring it, move it forward if it was necessary. But if the board, doesn't feel comfortable with this, we could wait until the code of conduct is passed and try to pass the bylaws language next year if we see fit.
And by the way, Mark Balin is here. Mark Balin is here on the meeting tonight if we need any clarification on any of what you just mentioned.
I would definitely like to know why Mark Balin thought that this language here that is before us to send to the floor is the appropriate venue.
All right, probably a good time to hear from Mark. Mark, are you there, and can you comment on this?
Yeah, hi.
Thank you.
Yeah, hello, good evening, everyone. So I think Daniela may have addressed this, but the way I viewed this was that ultimately the code of conduct will govern. So Israel, what the bylaw provision is simply saying is that the members are going to be held to a code of conduct. The delegates will get to vote on that at the convention. So they'll know that they're buying into this process. And obviously, if they don't want to, then they can not vote for this amendment. But ultimately, what is covered will be set out in the code of conduct itself. And so this bylaw amendment was really just meant to say that every member, yes, every member category this will apply to them. But if the code of conduct says it's only going to be enforced in these at these venues or at these events or whatever, and that hasn't been decided yet, well, then that will be the restricting element of it.
Okay,
So Mark, follow-up question to that.
Sure.
The language that we are voting on that will now be implemented in the bylaws, that we would then be sending to the convention floor for all the members to vote on, is all members of the society must adhere to the code of conduct approved by the board of directors. That's the very broad language. Then
Right.
what you're saying is there will be a code of conduct, but it's not going to be implemented as a bylaws change. It's going to be a policy, and therefore the board is the one that votes on the policy. It's not the society as a whole. And so to me, when I read this broad language, what I'm reading is that all members must adhere to this. And then anything that the code of conduct writes out as punitive, that will then apply. So what we're saying is whatever comes out of the code of conduct, all members, it will apply to them. And if the issue is it only applies to certain events, then shouldn't that be part of the bylaws so that we could understand? Otherwise, right, just basic statutory interpretation, this is quite vague. This is
And purposely so, I would say, because it ultimately, if you want to have the code of conduct in the bylaws, and a lot of organizations do go that route, but they don't have the more complicated amendment process that SPJ has. So in order to make minor tweaks and to change it or to update it and so forth, you go through processes. So yes, this is a situation where you're asking the members to basically say, trust us, in the sense of trust our committee, the code of
Join the meeting.
and they're going to come up with what they believe are fair and reasonable rules. It will be approved by the board, but it's not going to go back to the full convention for the delegates to vote on. And instead, it's going to be implemented by the board. And so it's essentially a delegation of authority by the delegates and the members to the board to carry this out. And so that was the purpose of this bylaw amendment. And frankly, if there are members and there's delegates who feel that this is just too great a delegation of power, well, then it may not pass at the delegate level or at the convention. But I think in order for this to work from just a practical standpoint of being able to get the committee to put together their ideas and get everyone to get agreement, this seemed to be a mechanism to accomplish that in a shorter period of time.
all right. Well, then let me just say this: since I am supporting changing the delegate system, and that would be removing that kind of barrier of delegation, then that really concerns me, because I would hope that we wouldn't have that system anymore, and that means that all the power would go to future boards. I would be very concerned that that kind of decision would be arbitrary and capricious, and certainly not rooted in objective. It's my experience that conduct can either be action or speech, and I'm concerned that too much speech would then become conduct. So you at least answered I was concerned, and now I understand why I'm very concerned. So thank you.
all right, let's move on. Did I say Peter and then Kevin? So I said Peter and then Kevin.
Okay, I go over my hand. I want to be sure that we're going to be voting, or the board will be voting on the code when it's completed. Is that right? And do we have that? And what is the assurance that that's going to happen? Because I do share Israel's cart and horse issue on this, but I just want that question answered, please, if anybody could.
Adam, can you explain next steps? And Danielle?
Yeah, so from the bylaws committee's perspective, my work in this is done in terms of moving this bylaws change forward, but the board will, Danielle, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the board will be the ones voting on the code of conduct. So, and again, the only reason why we have the cart before the horse is because we have a deadline 60 days before the convention, that the task force and the committee does not. So
I get that. How do we know that the board is going to vote on the code of conduct?
Claire, you're the president. Will you be bringing it before the board?
I will.
Okay,
Ashanti, if
now
for
we
some
know.
reason it goes
Okay.
past this into the next term, will you be bringing it before the board?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Okay, that's one of my, okay, that settles that. The other thing, to address Israel's point about the trickle down, I have suggested language, and since Israel actually made the motion, I believe, didn't you make the motion, Israel, that we're now discussing? Yeah, I'm going to put this in the chat, but I'll read it first. And if Israel finds it acceptable, maybe he can take it on. The code of conduct shall apply to attendees of the society's national and regional events. Bingo. That's all. And if you find that acceptable, fine. I just figured I'd give it a shot.
Comments from the board? Kevin is ready for a comment, so go ahead, Kevin.
You're muted, Kevin.
I don't think we're at that point with the committee to take that vote or to discuss that. I'm glad Mark's here and he could offer some explanation to Israel, and I want to backfill a little bit with Mark's comments so that Israel's and the other people are a little more familiar. As part of this process, I contacted IRE and ONA, and because they have codes of conduct. In both those instances, they initially started with their codes of conduct to be at conventions. Some of them were asked specifically by speakers if they had codes of conduct, but initially both of those organizations started with their codes of conduct at group events, particularly the conventions and conferences. Within a few months to a year of that happening, they made the decision that it should apply to all events under the banner of IRE or ONA. And that includes board meetings, chapter events, meetups, and so forth. They learned a lesson that they thought that became valuable. And that's kind of where we were headed with this. It's my understanding that some of the chapters believe that that's not appropriate, that the board shouldn't be dictating to them codes of conduct at that level, and that it's overreach. There are two things that do concern me now. One is the discussion that we had with regards to the code of conduct. Prior to joining the convention, if you would go on and have a registration, as you register for the convention, the code of conduct would pop up. And there would be a check off, an agreement that you would abide by that code of conduct in order for you to attend that convention. We also discussed having a similar check off when you joined or renewed your membership. That would now call into question for me, if I renew my membership and I pay my dues and I agree to this code of conduct, how does that not trickle down and apply to chapter events? And there was some discussion that if you paid national dues, that the national board could require the code of conduct you can't belong to a chapter unless you belong to the national. And if we require you to belong to the national and require you to submit to a code of conduct, does that not then force chapters to follow suit to apply the code of conduct to their events? We haven't answered that question, at least to my satisfaction. But I do think that if we are going to require it when we renew or we up our membership, or if we sign up for registrations, that we have to address that. So I don't know if that helps in anything that you were talking about, Israel, but that's some of the backstory.
All right, thanks, Kevin. I don't see any other comments from board members. Ready to move forward?
Public comment?
Well, I just have a question whether Israel finds my,
Yeah,
my
chat.
substitute acceptable
I,
or not.
yeah, I respectfully don't.
Okay.
I think my concern is, do we need a code of conduct at events? Absolutely, everybody has one. I'm very leery about bylaw changes. And I know Adam and I have had extensive conversations about, we put too much into the bylaws, right? And so therefore he understands where I'm coming from. And so anything that we put into the bylaws, it's the Constitution. And so right now, you know, if we're going to vote on the language that the bylaws committee has put forth, then let's vote on that. Obviously, everybody knows I'm going to vote no on that. But I would want to know more, right? I want to be able to, you know, if I'm voting on a code of conduct, I want to know how punitive it is. You know, again, based on prior experience, I'm very concerned about due process. I'm very concerned about protecting speech, even speech that makes people uncomfortable. That's my bread and butter. And so that's why I would respectfully to you say, no, if we're all in, we're all in, but that the code of conduct shall apply to attendees of the society. You know, what are we really saying? So, no, with all due respect, Peter, I'll stick with this. I'll vote no on this and let the convention floor, if it passes, let the convention floor wrestle with language, you know, if it's problematic for the society.
Adam, can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, so I would say there's two things. You know, we could vote to move this forward. I think the reason why this wound up at the bylaws committee is because, like I said, Mark Phelan waited, said it should be in the bylaws. We saw that there was the deadline. And that was great. I'm glad he let us know. That's his job. But if we think this is too soon, the board could vote this down and then vote, wait until the code of conduct is brought before the board, but we'd have to wait a year to codify it in the bylaws. So
I do want to point out that there is a code of conduct that does exist. Jennifer can explain that. It's applicable to vendors, and also it does appear on registration for the conference. So the current code of conduct, which is brief, is used for conference. And Jennifer, can you elaborate on that? Oh, there she is. She's there. Okay, Jennifer. So that what I just told you is what she would just confirm it. So does that make a difference? If there is one in place, it's a short one just for convention.
Or I can say I registered for the convention this week and I did see the code of conduct when I registered. So yeah. I don't know if that helps.
It popped up and you have to agree to follow it, correct?
I don't know if that happened, but it was clear that there was a code of conduct.
Okay, that's the convention code that we've had in place. Here's Jennifer. Jennifer, can you just elaborate on the code of conduct that does exist for convention?
Yes, if you remember in San Antonio in 2019, we had one posted at registration, and staff took that code and edited it down and wrote one for this upcoming convention. I believe it's on the convention website. I heard you talking about, if people have to agree to it when they register for convention. I know exhibitors and, we have them sign something saying they'll abide by it. I'm trying to find it
I believe
here.
we've seen that in other organizations and we were thinking of doing it with ours.
Yeah, if you go to spj.org/convention, at the top, there's a button that says code of conduct, and it is written out there. It talks about expected behavior, unacceptable behavior, consequences. and then some staff contacts to call or email if you witness anything or if something happens and you need some assistance. So it's fairly short. We thought it would be good for this convention. It covers all the bases. So.
Okay, thank you. Peter, is your hand still up or is that left over?
It
Okay.
is. It's actually for a question. If I could, this point of information for Mark. Whenever the code is ready and it is voted on at the board, would it have any less force if the board adopts it without the language existing in the bylaws? And with, I mean, is there a different? It'll apply either way, won't it?
Yes, I think, again, the thinking about having it in the bylaw was that it had, it then has member buy-in. So you're saying, you're giving the members the opportunity here to say that this is something that we approve of, not necessarily the specifics, because we don't have the specifics yet, but the concept. They approve of the concept. And I think that that is the better course. Is it technically required legally? Perhaps not. I mean, a board can set the membership requirements and things like that, I think, within the parameters of the bylaws. So this is probably something that you could do without, but I think the better course is to have a bylaw so that a member can, again, there'll be some member buy-in at the outset on this, and that they understand when they are renewing their membership, for instance, that this is something that that is in the bylaws that the delegates had approved of, which is that we were going to govern ourselves with a code of conduct. So I don't think you have to have it, but I think the better course was to have some member buy-in.
Okay, but the board and either the delegates or the members themselves could take that better course as a follow-up after the code is developed and is out there and is voted on, and then all that could follow next year, and still have the member buy-in at that point.
Oh yeah, and I think this goes back to Adam's point, which was simply that if we want to have a bylaw this year approved, you have to have it done now, essentially at the board level. And so, and if not, well, then this would then have to wait, a whole nother year. I do think, it would be better to have it in the bylaws when, at least the reference to it, because when you try to enforce it and you try to carry out the the directives from the code of conduct, whatever it may be, I think the imprimatur of having it in the bylaws will enhance the effectiveness.
I just want to piggyback on that a little bit too. We're just voting to move it forward tonight. The delegates, I'm imagining, though I'm not on the task force, Kevin might be able to talk more about this a little bit, and certainly Claire and Danielle. But if the task force moves a code of conduct forward that the members don't like, they can just vote. There'll be time for them to vote this down, because I'm imagining we're going to see it before the convention. So I don't know that for sure, but again, all we're doing is moving this forward, and the delegates can decide not to put it in if they don't want to.
Yeah, Danielle, could you explain as chair of the task force the plan with a town hall and to share the language before convention?
Yeah, absolutely. We're planning on holding 2 more meetings over the next couple of weeks. We have a date tentatively on the schedule for, I believe it's August 14th, whatever that Monday is. But we will have a town hall where we'll be explaining all of this to our members, or anybody that wants to join. It's the public. We will be answering questions, taking feedback, and perhaps even making some late revisions to the code after completion. So yeah, still work in progress, but we do have a we will be, having a transparent process that will be soliciting plenty of feedback.
Good. I just want, in the interest of time, with the remaining board member comments, if we could just keep them brief so we can get to public comment. So, Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Real quickly. I think that the work is really going to be on this committee to produce something that we can all live with. And I think we're working really hard to make that happen. I just want to remind everyone of the optics of this. If it comes to the convention and it gets voted down that SPJ can't pass a code of conduct, that has real repercussions. And I think it's something that we need to take into consideration. So it's going to be on us to make sure that what we deliver to you is palatable, and I think we can do that. Come to the August 14th meeting and voice your concerns, as Danielle said, and let's do what every other journalism organization, 9 of them ahead of us, has done, and that's implement.
Yeah.
Good.
And,
Thank you.
and I would like to just add, members that I brought on here are people that I wanted to have a robust conversation. I want to have a robust debate. I wanted to have a lot of great points of view and some really great minds where they're taking into account First Amendment concerns and different, cultural backgrounds concerns and diversity concerns, and, the whole gambit. And so, I really, one thing I have been really pleased with this task force is like discussions, about a lot of these really sensitive topics. And I really do think we've been doing a really great job with that on that front. The concerns that, I'm sure many of you have, trust me, they've been on top of my mind as well. And, probably been discussed by the task force during these meetings, and we'll continue to hold these conversations. And so, please send us your feedback. Let us know, and we can, definitely, if there's an area that a blind spot that we miss, we'd love to hear it. And we would love to make sure that this works for everybody. So thank you.
Thanks, Danielle. Okay, Israel, and then Adam will wrap it up.
Yeah, so 2 things. To Kevin's point, the code of conduct can be adopted by the board. That's a board policy that can be put in the policy manual. So that's not something that the society votes on. That's just bring it to the board, and the board votes on the code of conduct, and we have a code of conduct. However, what's at issue here is the broad language that we are voting on to go into the bylaws. And to Danielle's point, when Danielle says that the task force specifically voted not to recommend that this apply to the chapter, that is contrary to the construction of the bylaw proposal. The bylaw proposal says all members of the society must adhere. If it's the intent of the task force that this not apply to chapters, that is contrary to the construction of this proposed bylaw. So, I think I want to make sure that we keep both things in different piles. Code of conduct, absolutely, the board can vote on it. What we are voting on tonight is the bylaw amendment, which has quite vague and overbroad language, in my opinion. Thank you.
Adam.
I'd just like to very quickly say, regardless on how we vote on this, I think Claire made a great choice naming Danielle McLean the chair of the task force. I've got the utmost confidence in her, and I think that this is in fantastic hands. So I'm sure we're going to get a great document that will unanimously go to approve.
All right, so I'd like to move to public comment. Fred, am I okay on that? Okay, Hazel, you've had your hand up. It's your turn now. And I'm sorry, we're going to do the 2-minute timing for public comment.
I'll take a breath. This is really hard for me to say, but I hope that you will vote this down and not send this to the delegates this year. Let's get the language clear, and let's make sure that everything is in line and that SPJ is doing what SPJ needs means to do. Because whether the board is going to approve this policy or whatever the task force is working on, or put it to the delegates to be approved, is really crucial to this debate right now. This board in particular has already done the wrong thing and chosen one group of protected people over another group of protected people. And it is only by the grace of the person that your action was against that there is no lawsuit right now. And I don't want to go any further than that, but I'm just urging you all, give it a year. Let's see what the task force says, and then let's do this the right way. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Hazel. I'm just looking around to see if there's any other public comment. I don't see any. All right, we're ready to move forward.
Okay, so we're gonna vote first to move to call the question.
Okay. Do we have somebody to do that? Can somebody please call the question?
I call the question.
Okay, thank you, Ashanti.
Okay. So to call the question, vote, here we go. Claire,
Question, that's right. Okay, roll call. Yes.
Israel, no. Ashanti,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Daniela,
Yes.
Jody. I think Jody, you.
Jody's
I
on
think
mute.
You're a yes, right?
Yes,
I
that's
saw
a
your hand
yes.
up, okay. Adam,
Yes.
Kevin? Kevin, I don't hear you, but I think you're saying yes.
Yes.
And Peter,
Yes.
okay. So it's 8 yes, 1 no to move the question forward. So now let's vote on sending the proposed bylaw amendment to the convention floor. The proposed bylaw is all members of the society must adhere to the code of conduct approved by the board of directors. All right, here we go. Roll call. Claire Regan,
Yes.
Israel, no. Ashanti,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Daniela,
Yes.
Jody,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Kevin, Kevin?
Yes.
and Peter.
No.
Peter is no. So the proposed bylaw amendment moves forward to the convention floor on a 7-2 vote.
All right, thank you all. We're ready to move on. The good news is we're halfway through the agenda. The really good news is we've been through the longest parts of it, so that is the good news. All right, good job, everyone. And we'll go on to finance report. Israel, back to you for the financials. Can you give us an overview?
My pleasure. All right, members of the society. So you should have in your packet our financials for Q1, Q2, which involve April and May, and then the June financials, which just came out yesterday. So for those of you who were already looking for the June financials a couple of days ago, please know that they were just brand new today that YPTC, our part-time comptrollers, were able to put together. Given the financial crisis that we have faced this year, the Finance Committee has been looking at our finances quite timely. We're not just meeting once a quarter. The Finance Committee has met 3 times since the board adopted the budget for 2023. If you look at just the opening memorandum, it feels like, or it looks like, our finances are okay. However, during the finance committee meetings, a couple of things came out, and I'm just going to highlight those for you. Obviously, board members, if you have any follow-up questions, I highly encourage you to ask these questions, because in the coming months, you will really want to know, where are we financially? Coming out of Q1, we were probably $100,000 in the red. So 2 days after this board voted to adopt the budget, we were already behind by $100,000. Now, if you look at the executive summary says that we were in a surplus position with $158,000. However, as I pointed out to the comptrollers, when you look at, for example, all the deficits in page 5 and 6, if those deficits played out into Q2 and to Q3, eventually you would have the deficit. So yes, the cash assets, a snapshot was of 158 in the plus, but there were two things that we were already going to face going forward. One, we were going to get a lot of surplus in Q1 because of the awards. So we're going to get that money, and then that money was going to stop. And also, we were not going to see as many people re-upping for their membership as we saw in Q1. There are 2 times when society gets re-upped in membership, for awards and for conventions. So my concern coming out of Q1 was that we were already going to be in the red and we weren't going to increase in revenues. And we saw that in the second report that was filed July 10th, when you look at the months of April and May. As you saw, we started losing money because we started spending and preparing for the convention. So we went from Q1 of 153 in the plus to 25,000 in the plus. So you could see that our expenses in the months of April, May, and June started to pile up. What we also started getting is more clear about what is it that we need in order to get out of this financial crisis. If you look at Q2, the partial Q2 report on expenses, we started having, for example, merchant fees and credit card processing. Those are things that we get charged because we do the finances for the chapters. We started getting recommendations from YPTC, and I do want to bring to your attention from Q2 partial some of the recommendations made by YPTC. They're not going to be solved now, but it's certainly worth starting to have a conversation that we've already had in the finance committee. One of them is, how much does headquarters pay for being the intermediary for chapter dues? In other words, receiving the payments from members and then sending the amounts to the chapters. YPTC recommends that at some point, we would either pass on these administrative charges to the chapters, or we stop taking those. That's going to be probably for the next board to decide as you start looking at cutting expenses. So certainly start looking at that and start thinking about that. The other thing too that YPTC recommend is we need to have more revenue other than just the membership money that comes in, and certainly the amount of money that's coming in from the foundation. And that's going to be an ongoing conversation to be had. The third thing that we want to make sure that the society understands is that as long as Impexium continues to be our database, we're going to be in the dark. We don't know how many members we have. And if you look at the Q2 ending of June 30th, YPTC does inform the society that a substantial amount of money will have to be spent to fix that. Impexium would fix that if we re-up in the contract, and you can look at that in the recommendations. And that's a conversation for the next president to start having. But until we fix that, we don't know how much revenues is coming in membership. If you'll recall, I think at best, maybe we've got 3,500 members who are paying. Headquarters believes it has 4,300. We don't know exactly. The other thing too that I want to bring to the attention is that ending Q2, we are $800 in the black. In Q1, we had 4 months worth of backstop. In other words, we had money in the bank that if we needed to, the society could survive for 4 months. If you look at the Q2 ending, that has dropped by 2.5 to 3 months. So what we're going to need is we're going to need 2 things going forward. We're going to need a lot of people showing up to Las Vegas, and we're going to need a lot of people showing up as members. In other words, re-upping their membership. And certainly, I would say to all members that are here present, I would start tweeting, posting. Well, it's no longer tweeting. I would start Xing, posting, and linking and encouraging people to sign up for both membership and for Vegas, because we're going to need a large chunk. From membership, it looks like we're about halfway through what we need for revenues this year. So we need about $160,000 to $170,000 for membership revenue. And then the other thing too that I want to point out is at the end of Q2, we're at $129 in the black, but that's also with 2 things. That's with increasing membership dues, and that's with 3 people that are no longer working in headquarters. So certainly we've increased revenues because we're charging more in membership, and we're cutting our costs because we're not paying labor costs. And even with those 2 increases, we're only at $126 in the black. So looking at this, and the finance committee is going to meet in about 2 weeks once again, I would caution the next board that there's a good chance that when you take over at the end of September, you could be facing anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 in the red. Again, all depending on what happens in Vegas, because certainly that's going to dictate what you do for the next session or for the next term. And then keep in mind, we're at $826 in the black, but the foundation has told the society that it will not provide as much money next year as it's provided this year. The foundation is now the largest donor to the society. So I would have hoped that with all of that, we could have handed over to the next president at least 150,000 in the black, so that if the foundation once again says you're on your own for 23-24, we'd have enough cushion. And right now, it doesn't look like we have enough cushion. So we need to push hard for re-ups and memberships, and we need to push hard for people to attend Vegas. And I believe, and Claire, if you want to let people know about this, you're going to be meeting with people to brainstorm about how do we bring in more revenue. Certainly, philanthropic is one big issue, but I would say going forward, this organization cannot rely on membership dues alone. So that's sort of the overview right now.
Yep, agreed on all of that. Yeah, we have a meeting scheduled for August 2nd, just a brainstorming session with some, some longtime members of both boards who can just sort of pool their ideas about how to generate more support for the society. And so I'll keep you all posted on that.
Any question from board members regarding finances?
I just want to say
I
thank you for all of your hard work this year, Israel. It's been a hell of a year, so thank you.
Ashanti knows this, and we had a conversation early on when she took over as my VP. I told her, I said, look, my goal is to hand you a society that's in the black. And that certainly was my attempt to see where we could cut and where we could increase. And I'm concerned because what I want for her is to have a fantastic year. There's still a chance. There's still a chance in August and September that we can do that we can give to the next board, an organization that is thriving financially. But it's going to take all of us. It is.
Yeah, so far we're doing the best we can at the moment and doing the best we can. And we went through a lot in the beginning of our terms. For the first 5 to 6 months, we dealt with the budget crisis, really. It was crisis management. And we all came together and we got through it. So accommodations to all of us. I'm going to go over, Kevin, you have your hand up, and then Ashanti.
Yes, with regards to the costs for managing membership, do we have a ballpark figure? I'm looking and I'm trying to see what that costs the Society Israel every year.
I believe it will be, if you look at the column for contract, let me see.
Okay, yeah. So while you're,
yeah,
I had a conversation at the beginning of last year when we were running into Impexium, and I'm probably, what I'm going to say is going to probably cause some people to have a heart stoppage, but I think it's something that maybe this organization should consider, and it depends on, it's going to depend on, you know, your answer to how much money we're saving. But you know, the question was with regards to Impexium and not being able, the chapters not being able to know how many members they have. The question that was broached to me was, why can't the local chapter start collecting national dues? In other words, instead of it going from national to chapter, what if the chapters started recruiting members, collecting the national dues, taking their, and then passing that money up the chain to national? I think it's something that's worth exploring. I do know that membership organizations, many that I belong to, such as Audubon and a group of others, will allow you to join through the national, but if you choose to join a local chapter, like Sierra Club, for instance, you can pay your dues to Sierra Club local, and then that money trickles up. Now we're talking a lot of people, and we're probably talking a system that's far sophisticated than what we have. But I do think that if we can't get Impexium figured out, I think that's a strong possibility that we should look into letting chapters manage their membership and then forwarding the money up the chain. And Jennifer, I know you're probably ready to say, oh my God, no. Anyway, I just share that because that's in the minds of some people who at the chapter level who are concerned, and they're asking those questions, and it's something that might be worth exploring. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, just really quickly, just to answer your question. So the merchant fees and credit card processing is $12,000. You know, at this point, every penny is going to count. The other thing too is, yeah, you know, and as at the end of Q2, June report says, we've let go of 3 people, right? And sort of that's, we had discussed how do we get in the black by letting go of people. And now we've let go of 3, or we haven't let go of 3, I should correct. I'm so sorry, I apologize. 3 left, right? And so as we don't have as many employees, the work of headquarters is going to be spread thin, right? So now you're going to get caught up into maybe a downward cycle. I apologize if that's too gloomy, but there's only so much that a staff of 8 or 7 can do, and they can't hire more, right, because of the finances. So I'd be very concerned of saying, hey, could headquarters do X? Because the last thing we want is for more people to leave, because we need to run this organization. So I'd be very concerned with saying, headquarters, could you do X? Not right now. That would be my recommendation.
Ashanti.
I wanted to first follow up to something that Kevin suggested, and then also I have a question for Jennifer. First, you know, I think that being innovative and creative in how we figure out the dues situation is a good thing. I would also, though, caution that some of our smaller chapters are not going to be able to take in those funds and then send them to national. Some of our smaller chapters don't even have a full slate of officers in some cases. They don't have bank accounts in some cases. So even, the workload of doing that is not something that they can do. And I know also Mr. Becker put that in the chat as well. And I agree with him. I think that is a lot to put on volunteers at the chapter level when they don't have the same resources that we have at national. All that to say that there's probably a way in which this can be done, but I don't know if that would actually cause more harm to the chapters, especially the smaller ones and even some of the medium-sized ones, than we're thinking that it might. So I just want to put that out there. The second thing that I wanted to say, Jennifer, I have a question about the convention, because I am concerned that we are going to end up losing money on the convention. How many people do we need to have registered in order for us to break even at the convention?
We've been operating under the goal of 500 attendees. Now, I haven't done the math recently to see if that's what we need to break even. I think, we were talking about if we have 400, that'll be good. 500 would be great. We had 800 SPJ people or 800 people register under SPJ last year. So I think that's a reasonable expectation. But I can do the math and get back to you on that if you'd like. But
yeah,
I think
because I would also like to know, at what point do we start losing money? At what number of registrants do we start losing money off of the convention, right? So if we only get 400 people, are we losing money? If we only get 500 people, are we losing money? Because if my recollection is correct, the projections for the budget that we approved were based on about 700 people. I don't see us getting 700 people at this convention.
no, and that seems high to me. I'll have to go back and check. But
because
also
I thought
depends
we
on-
based it off of what our attendance was in the previous year, and we lowered it slightly. That is my understanding of the projections.
I thought we lowered it more than that, but I'll have to go back and look. It also depends on sponsorships. And I would just like to take this opportunity to say, if you all have contacts at your employers or just colleagues, friends that who you think might be interested in sponsoring the convention, please send those our way, my way. Staff can follow up with them if you want to make initial contact with them. We had a big sponsor last year for the opening night reception, and I reached out personally to him to see if that was an option this year. And they faced drastic budget cuts this year, and he said they just can't do it. But I've got some other places that I'm reaching out to personally. So Israel's right. Any help you can provide on sponsorships, getting new members, getting people to register to convention would be really appreciated. I do want to just tell you real quickly, staff brainstormed this week, and we're going to start August 1st offering it's kind of a membership drive. We're going to offer for new members that they can join for $50. And we're also going to market it along with, join for $50, and then you get the membership rate for convention. So we're hoping that will bring in some people. We're thinking about other things to try to close out this year in a much better position. So, but your help and ideas are greatly appreciated.
And then one more question for you. Do we have a sense at this point in time, the dollar figure of sponsors that we have already confirmed?
I checked yesterday, and I think a couple more have come in. The last I checked, it was $13,000. So not a lot. We're getting like $1,000 here, $5,000 there. I'm told there's a bigger one. They're trying to decide what level they want to sponsor. So we'll know more when they decide, but it's slow. But all of our sponsors pretty much came in the last 12 weeks leading up to convention last year. So we're about 8 weeks out. There's still time.
Jennifer, might I make a suggestion so that the board is in the loop as we head towards convention? Might it be possible for you to send us a weekly report that details the number of registrants we have, the number of sponsorships we have, the number of exhibitors we have, and then the budget lines, so that we, as we get closer to the convention, can have a better sense of what we're looking at from a financial perspective? and also from a membership perspective. I just think that would really help to make sure that everybody's on the same page. You know, we have 2 months left, and that would also kind of give us constant, reminders to keep reaching out to folks. But I think that would be really, really, really helpful if on a weekly basis, you can send out a report to the board that lets us know, kind of where we're headed as we get closer to the convention.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Ashanti, for bringing that up, because
Yep.
Ashanti discussed that. And if you could add membership numbers in there too, up, down, stable, that would be helpful.
Can I just answer one question for Ashanti?
go to Adam.
Ashanti, on the issue of break even, keep in mind that when we adopted the budget, that was with $65,000 in up money, right? In gains. So we weren't estimating that we would break even. We were estimating that we needed the $65,000, which I think it was between 550 and 600 attendees. So, breaking even would result in just that alone being 70,000 in the red.
Oh yeah, no, I'm very aware. I am 90% sure that we're going to end the year in the red. I mean, I think at this point it's a matter of by how much. So
Right, and then one more-
I've already wrapped my head around.
And one more thing for you to keep in mind too, is right now we're at 51% of membership revenue that we would need to have, right, in order to make budget. And so we're at 180,000 with an annual budget of 350,000. Now, 350,000, that would be if we had roughly 4,000 members. It's my contention, I hope I'm wrong, that we're really between 33 and 35. So I would urge a lot of people who know college students, this would be a great time to give gifts to incoming student journalism and buy extra, because if let's say I'm wrong and we got 3,700, we would still need an overwhelming number of people to re-up their membership between now and September so that we can make that 350. And that's where I'm getting in the red between 200 and 300 from looking at what you just said, right? The convention and then those membership dues.
Israel, just a point of information. I needed a membership number for my remarks at the Metropolitan Museum event. And I asked Crystal and she provided 4,198 as her current number. That was like about 3 weeks ago, just FYI.
Yeah, I think if you look at page 3 of 11 membership, YPTC said work is needed to clean up the existing data to more accurately and cost effectively track and maintain. I understand that number. And listen, I hope I'm wrong, man. I really do. But my numbers came from what we made last year. And just if we made 350, how many members would it take to get that? And it was at 34, 35, right? And if you look at the numbers, that I don't know how we have 41. I hope I'm wrong. I really do, man. At the end of the day, if everybody says, you just didn't have the numbers correctly, I'll be very happy. So the other thing too that I want to bring to this one more thing, and I really need you all to consider this, is we can't increase membership dues beyond 5% without the society voting on this. I would highly encourage you all to really consider bringing to the floor this year an increase in revenue, an increase in membership dues. That's a touchy subject. But if you don't want to face the budget crisis in 24 that we face this year, that's the one time we have to ask the members, please help us. Because without that, we're just going to be nickel and diming and going 5%. So that's for you, Ashanti and Claire, to talk and say, do we want to bring it to the floor and say we need to increase by 10% the membership dues?
Yep. Adam, and then
So
you can wrap it up after Adam.
Cool. So I just have a couple of quick questions. Jennifer, are we currently selling tables to news outlets for the convention hall? I know in San Antonio, I remember walking into the convention hall and it was like recruiters from everyone there. The Marshall Project, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. And I wasn't on the board then, so maybe this is totally off and you can tell me if it is, but I was told that those publications were spending a good amount of money to buy those tables. Is that the case? And are we still selling those tables?
We are, yeah. And I think we have a couple sold already. So and the, you know, the Las Vegas Review Journal Review Journal it is interested in buying a table. And yeah,
I could help you reach out to other publications. I sent you somebody at the Globe. That person was the person I sent you was the one who was in San Antonio in 2019. And she's a
awesome
speaker member. So she was actually asking me fairly recently who the executive director of the SPJ is. So now's a perfect time. The other question I had was, is everybody who's listed as a member in Impexium currently being charged? Because I know that there was a period where people were signing up, but they weren't actually being charged, which is a nightmare. Have we fixed it?
Yeah, to the best of our knowledge and ability, they are. We are sending a renewal email to people a month before they lapse, and then another one in the month that they lapse. And Crystal tells me by October, we should be ready to resume paper billing again for people who want that. So we'll be back to stuffing envelopes and sending out paper invoices to people in October.
We may need to check the emails that go out to remind folks to renew. My membership lapsed. And I found out from my board, my SPJLA board, and I got no notification that it was coming up due. I got no notification that it had lapsed. And clearly I have a vested interest in keeping my membership up to date. So if that is something that we are doing, I think we need to double check that it's actually going out to everyone. Because if it didn't go out to the VP of the organization, the soon to be president of the organization, then I have serious doubts that it's going out to everyone.
Okay.
Like, I know you guys are working hard to get this done, and I know that, you know, Impexium is a nightmare and a half. So, you know, I'm not placing blame, but just saying, you know, we probably need to double check that, because it didn't happen in my case. I had no idea.
Just as a reminder, it didn't happen to Claire. It didn't happen to me. You're not alone, Ashanti.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what office we hold.
So my other question is, I piggybacking off of something Israel said, you know, being able to have professors give memberships. It's something when I was membership chair I wanted to do. But at the time, and this was a year and a half ago, the section of the website where you can gift membership didn't work. Do we know if that's, I know that I've reached out a couple of times about it. It's back up. I know it got taken down. Does it work now? Because if it does, you know, I would still love to push. You know, I know college professors that will buy multiple memberships for students. So I would love to get a campaign or something like that on that.
Okay, good idea. Israel, do you need any board action on your reports?
No, just informing the board and just being privy to.
I would just like, sorry, I just want to say one other thing in terms of whether headquarters will still manage chapter dues or not. You know, I just want to, so I don't think it would be that the chapters would start collecting dues money for national. Like, that just wouldn't make a lot of sense. We couldn't do it. What I think would wind up happening is headquarters would just accept membership on a national basis. People would only be able to go to the website, sign up nationally, and they would have to sign up locally through the chapter, and the chapter would have to manage that themselves, which I can tell you the New England chapter can't do. But if we were to do that, I think it's a very dangerous thing for us to do, because we get a lot of members through chapters, right? Like chapters, I will recruit people to sign up. And right now they have to sign up to national to join my chapter in any chapter. If that is no longer the case, if headquarters is no longer, you know, taking care of this, and if I no longer have to send somebody to national, I won't. I could sign a ton of people up for $10. It's really hard to sign them up for $85. So if headquarters, and I don't think my chapter is alone in this, if headquarters no longer keeps track of our membership, I will no longer ask people to sign up for the national level, because I can get more money and therefore more revenue for my chapter without it. No offense, Jennifer, but I don't think my chapter is going to be able to do that. And that's my concern with that.
Okay, thank you. We're ready
And
to.
Claire, to your question real quick, is there anything that we need to do? And somebody asked me this, Somebody said, well, if you're projecting deficits, then why are you re-voting on a new budget? And the reason we're not voting again on a new budget is because right now, currently, we're showing 826 in the black. What I'm saying that is going to end up in deficits, it's a projection, just playing it out right now. So, I could be completely wrong and we could have an awesome August, September. So that's why we're not adopting a new budget, because the budget right now, if you look at the snapshot, we're in the black by $800. The things that I'm telling you that I foresee is just playing out, these numbers over the next 2 or 3 months. So that's why we're not adopting a new budget.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Okay, we're ready to move on to convention discussion for 2024 convention. We've already worked out a lot of the details. We're down to Indianapolis for our 115th anniversary. So that part has been already covered. So tonight we are discussing basically which hotel in Indianapolis. I was just there for the FLA, Future Leaders Academy, so I passed by both of them. And I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer to discuss that and just remind everybody that we are behind in our convention planning. We should really be 3, 4, 5 years out. The pandemic really set us back, trying to catch up. So tonight we will confirm 2024. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, at the end of June, Katie Riggs, Karen Sneath, and I did a couple of site visits in Indy at the JW Marriott and then the Marriott downtown. And staff's final recommendation is to move forward with the contract with the JW Marriott for 2024. For both hotels, the concession list, which is the list of complimentary enhancements like suite upgrades, discounts, etc., is identical. So it comes down to dates, rates, and the overall wow factor and space flow. So both hotels offer the following as well. They offer a $50,000 food and beverage minimum spend. It's the same gratuity rate and tax for both, and complimentary meeting space Wi-Fi. The main reasons we're recommending the JW are that they both have good September dates, but the JW is the exact same week in 24 that we're having the convention this year. The rates are really close. There's like a $20 difference per night, and Katie is working with Visit Indy and the hotel to try to come down by about $10. So really it would only cost attendees an extra $10 a night. The overall space flow is better at the JW and allows for more flexibility. The space is more updated. Over COVID, they put in new carpet, it's brighter, and we could have a lot of our programming on one floor. The breakouts at the downtown Marriott would have to be on 2 floors. And so there would be additional AV costs because of that. And the final reason is just that the JW is the most iconic hotel in the city, and coming off of DC and then Vegas, we think we may need something like that wow factor to sell it to people to want to come to Indy. The JW just feels special, and it has one more outlet than the downtown Marriott for dining. And they rolled out the red carpet for us. They fed us. The food was amazing. They're really excited to host us. So, for that reason, we're recommending the JW, and we would like for the board to vote to approve that if you so desire. So thank you.
There's no attachment in the board packet. Is that correct about this?
Correct.
Okay, so yeah, you just have to Google and look at the 2 buildings, I guess. The buildings look very different. JW Marriott is a lot more modern. It's a big glass building, much more attractive. And they're sort of on the edge of the city a little bit, but near the stadium. And is that what that is? The stadium? And then there's a museum across the street. I'm always looking to see, can our members walk to things, have some fun outside the building? Not quite near the downtown. You have to make a little effort to go there. It's sort of on the outskirts, but museum. What else did I see down there next to the JW Marriott?
It's near
baseball park is right next door.
Yeah, we're thinking the baseball Park would be a good place for a opening night reception. It is on the edge of downtown, but on the other side of the hotel, you can walk to White River State Park. We have a canal that you can walk and run along. The zoo is a little bit, it's kind of a longer walk, but you could walk to the zoo. And it's maybe 5 blocks to the mall downtown, movie theaters, restaurants, all that sort of thing.
And about an hour to an hour and a half away from DePauw University, our founding location. So we'll have to plan a bus ride over there or something. All right, so cost about the same, a little bit lower at, not a little bit higher at the JW Marriott, right? The better building. In my view. And then the dates are about the same. And can you just state what the dates are for us?
Yes, it's the same week. It's it's like the 24th to 29th.
Oh, last week of September 2020. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, we're asking about Jewish holidays. Did we check that out for those dates? Did you guys, you and Katie, check that out?
I believe we did.
Okay. And just while you're looking at that, by the way, you know, Ashanti and I have been talking about the next steps for the next conventions in 2025 and some partnerships of, so looking at that and thinking ahead, hopefully we'll be able to cover that soon and catch up with our planning. Ashanti, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Jennifer, as you guys have dealt with the Indy Tourism Board, have they offered any additional incentives for us to come to Indy? And I only ask because I just recently learned that NABJ, they have their convention this year in Birmingham, Alabama. And I was always wondering why that was. I found out yesterday it's because their tourism board gave them somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 to $200,000 to bring their convention there. So I'm just wondering if we can go back to the tourism board and ask them, is there any other incentives that you can give us for bringing this many people to Indianapolis, which is a lower tier city? It's not a huge, city that's known for big conventions. What else can you give us? And come from a place, not that, we need the help, but we're helping you. So what can you give us? So I just think that, we should make that additional ask, because we can use all the help that we can going into this next convention. As I said, I really thought that we should have done it virtually so we could save some money for a year. That it's neither here nor there at this point, but let's see what else we can get from Indy before we just kind of sign on the dotted line. And sometimes you have not because you ask not. So I just want to make sure that we're asking for everything we could possibly get out of the city for us bringing this many people to the area.
Yes, we can definitely ask that. I will say, Indianapolis is a pretty big convention town. So I don't know how much they need us, but it's always worth asking. So we will definitely do that. Thank you.
Yeah, this past weekend, there was a big convention there. The whole airport was decorated for the sorority Delta Sigma Theta, I think it's called. And I saw those convention people all over the place dressed in red. So it was a big national convention in the same hotel that we're talking about, JW Marriott. But the airport was decorated. We have to consider that. So when we all arrive, we get welcomed at the airport. Okay, any other comments? Oh, Kevin, you have your hand up?
Yes, I would just say, those of us who have been around long enough remember when the opening night reception was at the Indy 500 Speedway, and they were a major sponsor. So if you are so inclined to reach out to them to see if they have an interest in sponsoring us, that would be great. It was a fabulous time. There's nothing like racing around the oval in a passenger bus with a governor on it, so can only go 50 miles an hour. Fun time.
All right, it looks like we are ready to entertain a motion. Anybody?
I move that we accept headquarters recommendation for the JW Marriott at the Indianapolis for our 2024 convention.
We have a second.
Seconded.
We've already discussed, right? So Fred, we can move on to the vote. Is that correct? Okay. All right, so all those in favor, and let's do a roll call, Israel.
Okay. All right, here we go. Claire,
Yes.
Israel, yes. Ashanti,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Daniela,
Yes.
Jody,
Yes. Yes.
Adam. Adam, yes. Yes, okay. Kevin
Yes.
and Peter. Peter is frozen, or is he? Yes. Give me a thumbs up, because yes. okay.
Yes.
That's unanimous. Jennifer,
Unanimous vote.
the
for the
board
evening.
votes to take your recommendation from HQ.
All right, thank
Awesome,
you all.
Thank you.
We've got dates and a place. We're all set for 24. All right, moving on, chapter and regional delegates, going back to delegates for a moment. And I'm going to hand that over to Jennifer to kick that off. And I believe Adam will also add into that, but let's try to keep it down to under 10 minutes if that's possible.
Yeah, Adam requested that this be added to the agenda, so I'm not sure what he wants to talk about specifically, but I will tell you that we this week are working to get emails and information out to chapter leaders so they can submit their chapter delegates for convention. And then we are also, the form is live actually on the website for people to submit their interest in becoming a regional delegate. We have set the deadline as August 25th. We think that'll give us enough time to collect everybody who's interested and hold any runoff elections if needed. If you remember last year, we had to hold a few in some of the regions because there was more interest than spots. So we've got the process all set up and ready to go. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Adam if he has anything to say.
Yes. So the bylaws state that the board decides the policies and procedures for the selection of regional delegates. Last year, our previous executive director tried to make regional delegates in 4 regions commit to attending the convention, and when they didn't do that, he removed them from the regional delegates list. That got fixed, but this year I would like us to institute a policy saying that no delegate needs to commit to attending the convention in order to sign up. We have, as far as I know, never done that before. Our bylaws are very clear that up to half of those who sign up to be delegates could skip the convention, and the convention would still be able to function normally. That's our quorum. It also outlines what happens if delegates don't show up for the convention. They don't get to vote. That happens, I'm sure, every year. There are delegates who don't show up and then votes don't get cast. And I would also say that the regional delegates don't have alternate delegates either. There's no mechanism for regional delegates to sign up to list an alternate delegate when they sign up. So once a delegate is signed in and has the vote, they're locked in. So my 2 recommendations would be that we not require delegates to commit to attending the convention because we've never done it before. We shouldn't start now, and that we also not have alternate delegates for regional delegates.
So what board action are you requesting for this tonight?
I make a motion that we not require delegates to commit to attending the convention when they sign up to be delegates or to be delegates.
That they not be required to attend convention.
Yep, to be delegates.
I second the motion.
Okay, second, discussion, board members?
So let me get this straight. You want to make chapter delegates have to show up at convention. No delegates from any chapter have to show up in order to vote.
No. Only in order to sign up. Right now, the bylaws state if somebody is a delegate and they do not show up to the convention, they cannot vote. So no vote gets cast, right? So let's say I sign up to be a regional, to be the delegate for SPJ New England in this hypothetical scenario, and I don't have an alternate vote, an alternate delegate. If I don't show up, New England's votes don't get cast. That's what our bylaws state. And what I'm saying is the same rules should apply for regional delegates. We've never asked delegates to commit to attending the convention when they've signed up in the past. And last year we tried to do it for just 4 regions, which is not equal. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay. Other board comments or questions? All
Is-
right.
Is,
Oh,
is this a bylaw change that needs to be taking place?
No, so the bylaws state that the board decides the policies and procedures for the selection of regional delegates. So we decide, how they're selected. And what I'm saying is last year, headquarters unilaterally instituted a policy that they shouldn't have been allowed to do. And I'm trying to make sure that they don't do that again this year.
Well, okay, so while we're on the topic of this, let's talk about some of the regional delegates who were available. Because there were regional delegates, and I'm going to speak specifically of 4. There were regional delegates to Chapter 4 who did not live in Region 4. And how is that possible? They were allowed to sign up and they were allowed to be given a vote. One person had moved out of the region and moved into Philadelphia. Another person was living in Region 5 and was moving into Region 4 who hadn't moved there yet. And another person still had an address at headquarters for Texas. How were they allowed to be delegates, at-large delegates for Region 4?
They shouldn't have been.
Well, 4 of them were, and the same thing happened in Region 5.
Well, I don't know how that happened. Regional delegates should not be serving as delegates in regions outside of the regions. Just,
Of course they should. Of course they should be.
Right.
I'm just trying to figure out what the heck. I'm trying to figure out, you were saying that headquarters wasn't allowing people to show up who didn't show up to vote. I'm also questioning what happened at headquarters and what's taking place with delegates who are not in their region showing up as at-large delegates voting to represent a region they don't live in.
That I'm not, Jennifer can speak to that. I don't, but I would agree with you if you want to institute that policy as well, because it should be.
This is the first I'm hearing of that, Kevin, and I'd be interested to know more about who they were. Linda Hall and I combed through the lists, and we found a lot of issues with the database. I remember pulling a list for, Region 1 and ended up having people from Texas who were on that Region 1 list. I don't know how that happened with the database, but we cleaned the data as much as we could to make sure the lists were accurate. I think, John, when he was signing people up as delegates, he was asking if they intended to go to convention because there were a lot of people who had their memberships paid for last minute so they could sign up as a delegate. I don't know if they had been members before that or not. And then when he asked if they were intending to go to convention, they would say no. And he was basing his decision on, that delegates have to be on the convention floor. And there was debate about what does on the convention floor mean. And then we got into the whole hybrid meeting idea. And I know people think that would be easy to pull off, but it's expensive. For people to be able to hear what's going on in a big hotel ballroom would cost at least $5,000 to patch into the hotel's AV and make sure people can hear what's going on so they can vote. So there were a lot of issues last year. That's what I know about what happened before I came into this role. So
Yeah, what I will say is, regardless of what the floor is, the floor, right? If we're meeting in person, it's the floor in the room at the convention. I am not arguing that people who don't show up to the convention should be allowed to vote. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when SPJ New England signs up for its delegate votes, nobody says to us, are you attending the convention or not? And if I say no, nobody removes me as the delegate. Headquarters doesn't do that. And we shouldn't do that for the regional delegates either. If somebody in the region wants to sign up to be a delegate, right, whether they cast their vote or not is up to them. And headquarters should not be deciding, who those people are. And if there's an election, the people that get elected are the delegates. That's how it's always been. Headquarters in 117 years that I am aware of has never asked people to commit to attending the convention and removed them if they didn't.
Well, wait a minute, Adam, because just earlier in this meeting, you were complaining about someone who showed up at convention and had 10 votes. Do you think that
Yes.
person, yeah, okay, well, that's because they had 10 separate delegates and those delegates chose not to come to the convention. So they pulled those, it happens all the time.
That's not how it works. That's not true. They
Oh,
didn't have 10, they were
okay.
the only person to sign up. And what I'm saying is in this scenario, you would have 10 people sign up, right? So each one of those people would get 1 vote. If 5 of those people don't show up to convention, then the 5 that do don't get 2 votes. They each still get 1 vote because those 5 votes still belong to somebody, even if they're not there. They just don't get cast.
Okay,
I'd like to call the question.
I think it needs to be repeated.
So I make a motion that headquarters not require anyone who signs up to be a delegate to commit to attending the convention in order to be a delegate.
All right, and we're calling the question. So this vote is going to be to call the question. Okay, everybody knows what we're voting on?
Yes,
Okay, here we go. Claire,
yes, call the question, yes.
Israel, yes. Ashanti,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Daniela,
Yes.
Jody,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Peter. Peter, can't see you, I think.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Yes.
All right, yes. All right, it's unanimous on the call of the question. So
Are we ready to entertain a motion?
They already made the motion.
we do make the motion. So now Fred was about to talk. So Fred,
No,
go ahead.
just say you already have a motion.
So we're going to vote.
We already had the discussion, so
That's right.
ready to
Yeah,
vote.
in fact, there's no time for discussion now.
Right. So here we go. Regional delegates. Claire,
Yes,
Israel, yes. Ashanti,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Daniela,
Yes.
Jody. I think she's,
Yeah, yes.
yes, thank you. Thank you, Jody. Adam,
Yes.
Kevin,
No.
and Peter.
frozen.
Frozen again?
Yes.
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 All right.
Yes.
The motion passes 8-1, Madam Chair.
And we got one more. I make a motion that there not be alternate delegates for regional delegates. Do you have a second?
Can you explain that? Okay,
Yeah,
I'll second it for the point. I'll second it for the point of discussion because I'd like to hear the reasoning behind that.
Yep, again, we've never had alternate delegates before. When a chapter signs up for alternate delegates, like I'm the president of SPJ New England. I get the form to fill out to be a delegate. So I list my name down there. Right underneath it, it says, would you like to list an alternate delegate? Right? And I can either submit one or not. It's a choice. But regional delegates don't get that same option, right? So what happened last year was the regional delegates signed up to be regional delegates. They didn't have the option of listing an alternate, so they didn't list one. So there was no alternate delegate for each one of them. But what happened was somebody said they weren't going to be there. Headquarters removed them from the list and bumped somebody else up that was in the election for one. And that shouldn't have happened because the voters in that region voted to give that person the vote and they did not list an alternate delegate. I guess what I'm getting at is headquarters should not be deciding who the alternate delegates are, and they shouldn't be deciding who gets to fill in for people.
Jennifer, would you like to weigh in? Because headquarters was mentioned.
Yeah, I don't look at it as headquarters decided. We just gave the open spot to the next highest vote getter. The voters decided.
I would say the voters didn't decide. The voters decided to elect a person, and that person was not given, the same way chapters are, was not given the option of listing an alternate delegate. When I sign up with SPJ New England, it's my choice who that alternate delegate is. And I could choose not to list one, meaning if I don't show up, my votes don't get cast. And the same thing should apply to regional delegates.
I think in practice for chapters, if no alternate is listed, but someone doesn't show up, I think it's been kind of loosey-goosey, and like if another chapter member's there, they've been honestly like given the votes.
Fair enough, but that's against
that's right or not, but yeah.
Yeah, it's against the bylaws. You need to be an accredited alternate. So I just don't want votes to be given away. That's what I'm saying.
Can you cite for me where it is in the bylaws?
It's going to take me a minute to pull it up. Officers, board of directors, elections, convention. Okay, voting must, so this is
Where
Article 10,
specifically?
Article 10, section, where is it? Okay, section, it's a big section. Section 2.
Oh, okay.
Right, it says voting must be done by an accredited delegates or their accredited alternate delegates in person, and it says or participating remotely if such means are made available, which of course they're not being. So it has to be an accredited alternate delegate. And accredited alternate delegates, when through the chapters, are selected by the chapters, not headquarters.
So rather than eliminating that, why don't we have a system where there's alternates that are allowed to be listed? I mean,
Because
Jennifer explained that they're not picking, they're taking, if the first person can't be there, then the second person in terms of number of votes gets that.
Because what if that person who's not showing up wants to hold that vote, right? They're doing it strategically for a vote that doesn't get passed. They have the right to do that. Once they own the vote, they should be able to do whatever they want with it within the rules, and not casting a vote is within the rules.
So what's the end game here? What is this all about?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I think the regional delegate system has been gamed. I think that there were people who signed up who, when the regional delegates were created, they left their chapters to collect lots of votes. Region 1, somebody left their chapter and cast 10 votes. In Region 2, there was one person who left their chapter and cast 6 votes. There were 2 people in Region 2 who split those, but they both left their chapter. So in order to prevent lots of people from casting large numbers of votes, we need to sign more people up. In Region 1, you need to sign 10 people up in order to fill all those votes up. So I want to be able to sign 10 people up. And if I ask somebody in Region 1, do you want to be a regional delegate? And they say yes, they should be able to sign up. And if they aren't going to show up, or if they don't want to cast their vote, they should be allowed not to do that. Chapters can decide not to.
So when you say you, are you specifically talking about you? Because you could go around and get 10 of your closest friends to join SPJ and take those 10 votes. So who's
that's not 100. That's not 100% accurate. There is a date in which members have to have been a member by in order to sign up to be delegates. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but yes, you could. If I wanted to sign somebody up around Christmas time and say sign up, and you're a journalist, because I hope we're just recruiting journalists, then yeah, I could sign them up and say, please be a delegate next year. That's strategy. That's how our system works. It's a game. The same way there were people who were members of chapters that left their chapters to become regional delegates just so they could cast those votes.
So, all right, so I want to make sure I get it. So you have a problem with people leaving the chapters to gain collective votes because that's gaming the system. But if you
Yes.
want to go around and collect 10 of your friends starting in December,
Mhm.
and you want them to be regional votes, that's not gaming the
It's
system.
100% gaming the system, no doubt about it. My point is, if you're going to allow one group to game the system, you can't not allow the other, as long as it's within the rules. You can't sit there and say, yes, you can game the system to get 10 votes, and I'm not going to say anything about it, but, you know, but this other person can't, you know? What I'm doing is I'm stopping those people who are getting 10 votes from having those 10 votes.
I just want to say Peter has his hand up. Peter? Peter, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. There's kind of a party atmosphere here. I just had to ask my friends to keep it down while I spoke. I want to make a point that's going to why Adam's idea actually is in the interest of democracy and why the way it works right now with SPJ headquarters convention, you have issues that are going to be taken up at the convention, as we do this voting once again on the delegates or no delegates issue. And I'm getting a little box here that says my internet connection's unstable. So if I crap
Peter?
out, I'm sorry.
Hey, Peter, could you turn your video off, and that might help us hear you better?
Okay, all right, I will do. I hope you can hear me now. If you have vying to be delegates and represent their chapters, and one of them is in favor of the delegate system and one of them is opposed to it, and the ones in favor of the delegate system win, the way that headquarters is working right now, if the ones who win and want the delegate systems can't make it, the opponents who don't want it are going to get to be seated as delegates, which is really against the interest of that chapter. So having the delegates be able to assign their own, at least ensures that to the degree our delegates ever represent the interest of members, which is never assured because we don't have that in our system, but at least you have the chance of the alternates reflecting vote the same way as the original delegates. That's my only point, and I hope you heard that.
Yeah, some of it cut out, but I think we got most of it. Anybody have a question for Peter about something that was cut out? Okay. All right, any other comments, questions from the board? All right, ready to move on to the next step?
So if someone has to call the motion.
Yep.
I call the motion.
I call the question.
Okay, we're ready to
You know,
vote.
it's not really necessary to call the question. You can
Okay.
just vote.
You just vote. All right,
So
roll
it's just
call.
vote.
Israel, roll call, vote, please.
All
And do
right.
we need it stated again? Do we need it stated, what we're
Yes,
voting on?
please, since we've been.
Adam, please
coming
state
to
it one
Adam.
more time.
I make a motion that there be no alternate delegates for the regional delegates.
Okay.
Okay.
Israel, roll call?
Yep, here we go. Claire,
Yes.
Israel, yes. Ashanti,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Daniela,
Yes.
Jody,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Kevin?
No.
No. And Peter?
Yes.
All right. Adam's motion passes 8-1.
All right, thank you, Israel. All right, moving along. We're past the 3-hour mark here. So on to number 11, community reports. We added asterisks so that members can look into the board packet to see the reports. Many of them are written reports. I'll just quickly add, is there a chair here who would like to say anything about their committee or community before we move forward?
Yes, Eleanor is here.
Hi, Eleanor.
Hi.
Give us a little
Yeah,
update.
I'll do this very quickly. Okay, so we just closed the application process for the Diversity Leadership Fellowship. I'm happy to report that we received 43 applications. We broke the record that was 22 in 2023. So next steps are that we are starting judging as of now. And on August 10th, we will submit the names of the 8 fellows that we submit. So we will have 3 of our committee members as judges, and that's it.
Wow, that's great. Congratulations on breaking the record. That's terrific. Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, good news. Thank you for sharing. Any other community or committee chair? Jody Spotted Bear.
Yeah, I submitted a written report, so I'll be very, very brief. I am just as a result of the work that we did during Sunshine Week, we've had a lot of good results coming from that. On Thursday, the Las Vegas Journal Review did an investigative piece focusing on our nomination, our winner of the Black Coal Award. And that print edition will be out on Sunday. So I'm excited to see what they focused on, because of course I don't know what's all going to be in this big project. They've been working on it for months. And then just as a follow-up, the Freedom of Information Committee is working on selecting moving from the Black Hole Award, we're now picking the Sunshine Award, and we expect to have our voting done and within the next week or 2. So anyway, you can look at my written report, but thank you.
Thank you, Jody. That's a lot of good impact your committee is having. Anybody else would like to give a brief report?
Just really quick, Claire, on the legal defense fund.
Yeah.
I encourage all members, if you know of any journalists who do need money funding, there is funding for you to apply for a grant that we can help in a legal cause that you're having, specifically dealing with First Amendment or news gathering. We haven't had any submissions for grant applications this year. I've certainly talked to chapters and encourage other members if they know of people. So, I mean, for my term, it's running out, but certainly for the next chair of the Legal Defense Fund, I hope that the work continues. It's an amazing committee that helps with journalists who are facing legal action. I do want to bring attention to the society and to this board. The Department of Justice was investigating the Minneapolis Police Department and their abhorrent civil rights abuses, but buried in the 52-page report that the DOJ released was this key language that I would say for next year, this is going to be vital. The First Amendment requires any restrictions on when, where, and how reporters gather information, leave open ample alternative channels for gathering the news. That is a huge win for journalists who are going to be covering everything from protest to campaign. What the Department of Justice is saying is that reporters cannot be harassed by police when they're doing their job, similar to Ashanti's work in California, which was amazing. Now the Department of Justice is implementing that. It might as well be now a national policy. So keep that in mind, that now your reporters are covered by the Department of Justice when gathering these news events, and if there is protest or any kind of police action, the Department of Justice will defend your right as a person of the press. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the society and the board.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Israel. That's great. Okay, anybody else? Community?
I think everyone's familiar with all the work the bylaws committee's done, given all our conversation today. So, but feel free to read my report.
You've had the floor tonight, so we know all about bylaws. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna move on to number 12. We have Chris Vaccaro here, waiting patiently through the whole meeting. Thank you, Chris. And I wanted him to share some great news and great work that he led at the Northeast High School Journalism Institute, Summer Journalism Institute. And Chris, please share with the board and our members what happened in July, just earlier this month, right, in Rhode Island.
Yep, it was a really great collaborative effort by SPJ leaders and volunteers from the Northeast. We started it last year in Region 1 with an idea of making sure we could cultivate the next generation of SPJers, but also train them a little bit, build up some of their foundational skills and the principles of journalism, get them out in the field covering stories that are native to that landscape. And last year was a test run and we liked it and it was good. And we got really great feedback from the surveys we gave the students. And this year we had 20 students. 4 of them were returnees as student leaders, student team editors, team leaders, so whatever you want to call them. And then 16 new students who joined them. They're all high school students. They're all from Region 1 in the Northeast. And like I said, our volunteers are all either professional journalists, journalism professors, but all of them are associated with pro or college chapters from SPJ in the Northeast as well. So it's a special connection we've tried to make with SPJ. In this case, we hosted it at Roger Williams University, both years, both last year and this year. It was great. It's coastal. It's got a beautiful landscape. And we spent a day or so in the classroom doing hands-on workshops related to digital and multimedia storytelling, a little bit of ethics, a bunch of interviewing, writing, reporting skills. And then we sent them out in the field the next day. So they were telling stories in teams of 4. So they would do some narrative, some photos, some video, and publish it on a site that we built for the sake of the Institute. It's if you Google SPJ Summer Institute, that's basically the URL. And all the stories relate, in this case, to Rhode Island. Some of it about the actual climate, some of it about the landscape, some of it about some historic things that took place in the area. Obviously, there's a lot of history that dates back hundreds and hundreds of years. So they did a great job and they loved it, which is the most important piece of this. It's not about the trainers or us. It's about doing it in the name of SPJ and making sure the students have a great experience and want to do journalism and want to one day be SPJ members and leaders themselves. So we're already thinking about where we're going to do it in the Northeast next year. It was funded this year by the Boston Globe Foundation and the Dolan Family Foundation. Pat Dolan's the owner of Newsday. And last year we did get a grant from the SDX Foundation. So it's year by year, trial by fire, figuring out how to build the budget to make it work. Students pay a small amount to be on campus, housed, fed, taken care of by RAs and security and all the confines of the university itself. And just a really great experience. I'd love to be able to see it done elsewhere, for the same ability to grow SPJ and in this next generation, very younger generation. So I sent a playbook out to all the regional coordinators and followed up with some of them individually, specifically about budget, specifically about schedule and how we broke down the 3-day experience for everybody. But overall, very positive, one of the most fulfilling and gratifying experiences I've had with SPJ. And it's because of the leaders that, raised their hand, volunteered with me to make it happen and the experience that the students got. So love to be able to have everybody else feel that and experience that as well. So more to come, hopefully. But I appreciate the support, Claire, and the ability to talk about it tonight. And it's been great listening to everyone's dialogue and communication throughout the last 3.5 hours too.
Well, I put you toward the end because it's great news. We always want to,
end on a positive note. I like that. Yeah,
of course. And it really, kudos to you, especially for, focusing on high school journalism students. That's wonderful. You can never start too early with students, right? And the playbook, thank you for that. That's great. And I asked Jennifer, she just put the link in the chat so everybody can explore a little bit more about your Summer Institute. And let's hope maybe, who knows, it could spread across the country to other locations, right? That's the goal. So that's a good goal to have. But really, thank you very much, Chris, for all that work. Glad it was a success again.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. All right, so we're getting toward the end here. Jody Ray of Spotted Bear, we have item on the agenda about 501c3 and C6, and I'm wondering if you'd be willing to table that for the next meeting. Is that possible?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, in the interest of time. That's great, thank you. And it was really just to explore the differences between the two and other possibilities and options. So we will table that for our next meeting. So we can move on to enter executive session. Board members, do you have the fortitude to do it? We are tasked with deciding on 3 awards tonight. I think we can make it happen. We're into 3.5 hours almost, but I think we can do it and get it done. It really needs to be done for August. So let's plow through. You good for that? All right, I see a couple of tired thumbs up, but let's do it. So we're gonna enter into executive session. We need a vote for that, I believe, or a motion for that.
I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session.
Second.
Okay, can we
I
have?
think that was Emily seconded, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor, any?
It
yes,
requires a
yes.
2/3 vote, but I don't think that'll be a problem.
No, I
Okay.
think.
All those in favor of entering into executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Emily's giving me a thumbs up. Any opposed? Okay, unanimous.
Great,
Let's go
and I will
through the-
just, for the members who are still here, we will come back. That's part of our bylaws and board policy. So we will come back. We won't have much to do, but we will come back to say hello and goodbye to everybody. All right.
There's nobody waiting.
I want to take this moment to publicly thank my wife because tonight's our anniversary and she let me do this.
What?
So,
That's dedication.
Wow.
so.
Happy
yeah.
anniversary and
Well,
God bless her.
What number is it, Kevin? What number?
Well, we're both remarried, so this is our third year of our second.
Oh, then you really needed to celebrate, like,
Well, we went to dinner the other night, but yeah, it's still,
you're still on the honeymoon stage.
She knew what she was signing up for. With
No,
yes,
she
did.
She did not, and she
Oh, no.
reminds me of that.
Congratulations, Kevin.
Yeah,
Thanks.
congratulations.
Thanks.
All right, guys.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, we're ready to adjourn unless anybody's anything else, another milestone to annouse. No, okay. You're it for tonight. You're the only milestone, Kevin. All right.
Thank
Now,
you.
we have a motion to adjourn.
Who's you're accepting? I think Adam and I did it at the exact same time.
We'll go with Ashanti was first motion and Adam was second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great night. Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.